Listen, babe. Oh, yeah. It's alright, alright, alright. 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 It's alright, alright, alright. Listen, babe. Oh, yeah. 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 It's alright.
Hey,
What's happening? What's happening?
We're back, huh?
You back?
Hey, so welcome back. Hopefully you guys had a great Thanksgiving and spent some time with your family. Hey man, this, like I got started listening to all the indigenous people lives that were lost during that period of time. I don't want to ruin the moment, but something that I'm still sensitive about. So welcome back. Hopefully everybody had a good weekend. Hopefully everybody's okay. This our last class is going to be on the 15th of this month, and we're going to be starting a new year. There will be some changes for next year. Next year, I think we're going to focus a little bit more on entrepreneurs next year than we have in the previous years. I think previously we focused on motivating people, but based upon growth and knowledge, we realized that it's important to drive entrepreneurs because then entrepreneurs influence other people, right?
Right.
So it's two is that we're gonna focus on tiering a little bit next year. We're gonna focus on you're gonna teach the first 6 months. I'm teaching the second 6 months, but neither one of us are gonna go absent. I'm going to pretty much fall to the background and be online, engaging folks, and then Corda be the dominant person in class, and he'll have guests or however he decides to do it, and same thing in the second 6 months. The first 6 months, I think we're going to do a heavy emphasis on the foundational work, and then the second 6 months is going to be pretty much advanced systems, advanced theory, advanced strategy. What we're going to try to do in this class is going to try to make you guys chefs. What I mean by chefs is that Shane Parrish says it best that if you were to go into a restaurant and a line cook and a chef was to prepare the food, it would be impossible to tell the difference. But he says, but if something goes wrong, you would instantly know who's a chef. And what we want to do in this class is move you guys away from anecdotal learning, which is give you the recipe, give you the recipe, give you the recipe, give you the recipe. And that's cool, but you're vulnerable to variations. And as business offers randomness and variations, changes, when the norm is threatened, you can't be the chef. You're a line cook. And you're waiting for a chef to show up, meaning that if we don't teach you guys how to be chefs, we're creating dependency. And our goal is that we're not trying to create dependency because we're trying to have impact. And dependency is not scalable, right? We can make a lot of money for dependency. Like if this is what we were doing full time, we were like some self-help guru type dudes, then we would really go into dependency game. You guys would not know. We wouldn't even know we're doing it. We would make you guys line cooks. And so when you guys run into a problem that didn't fit in a formula that we delivered to you or we exposed you to, you would come to us for solutions. We want you guys to become the chefs. We want you guys to be able to produce your own formulas. We want you guys to be able to navigate your unpredictable paths, right? Because we can't predict their paths. Like it's impossible. A master of business doesn't give us the circle of genius to see all the variations and all the possibilities and all the challenges and all the creative options. And that's not possible. That's not even reasonable to even think that. But quite often when people are used to receiving fast solutions, antidotes, right? How do you solve this problem, Sway? You know, when you get to the point where you want these quick, fast, package it for me, just tell me what to do. Then it's really easy to believe that there's somebody in the room that's a guru, right? But all gurus are pulling from sources. And what we're trying to do is get you guys to the source so you could drink and become a guru of your own life. But even all the self-help books are full. That's one of the reasons I started giving so many podcasts in this class, because everybody was delivering you these conclusive ideas, but no one's ever asking, well, where did that person get their ideas from? And we started to worship these people, certain people. Oh, did you hear what this person say? Did you hear what that person say? Did you hear what this person said? And you don't realize you could be that person too. But when you get used to all these quick written books, because we got to a point as human beings, we want fast information. The problem with fast information, it disables your ability to make decisions. Because to be able to make rich decisions, you have to be able to own the actual models. If you don't own the models for yourself, then when it's time for you to make decisions, you're trying to paste and copy what other people have told you, as opposed to look at all the ingredients involved, understand the nature of all the ingredients involved, and then produce a solution, right? Similar to like when you hear about Green Beret, right? When you're military and you're trained to be in the wild in these different environments, they teach you all the natural elements, and then you're able to create your own solutions on the spot for your survival, right? And that's the same thing in business. We don't need you praising Court Nana. That doesn't go anywhere. That doesn't, and it's not even helpful. And it's going to slow the whole program down. Also, we need to enrich peer-to-peer dialogue. And so in order for us to enrich the peer dialogue, we have to start giving you guys enough ingredients so you guys can discuss your creative recipes of how you move forward in your life. But this is really not a copy and paste game. And I think that's why I hate the 7 rules of success and the 5 steps to success and, you know, the easy hacks of success and all these little different ideas suggest it's simple, right? It's just like today we were interviewing a possible nanny, because our original nanny goes back to being, she's a stewardess. So she's going back to the plane systems. And she was, as we interviewed the new nanny, because there's 2 parents involved, one of the parents said, well, you know, I asked her a question, she didn't respond like this. And I said, well, she can't respond like this because there's so many variations of parenting. What she has to do is have formulas in place that she can always adjust to whoever she's nannying, whoever she's serving as a nanny, because each house may have a different formula of what is parenting, right? That's the same thing with business. Every entrepreneur is going to have different variations. There's a restaurant in Chicago where they're hella rude, but that's their brand. And people go there from all over the world
Just to get cussed out.
Just get cussed out,
Yep.
right? That's part of that brand. Now, that's not going to work for my brand, but that definitely works for that brand, right? And so we have to know that there's variations to this game that's so broad that to just say this one methodology works for everything across the board it's more important to recognize the methodology and how it works, how it's applied, the history of that methodology, where the origins of identifying the methodology, and then being able to understand its application as opposed to just seeing it as a solution, right?
Yeah, I think also too it comes with knowing yourself completely, thoroughly. If you know yourself, you know all your strengths, your weaknesses, you know you can navigate around yourself. You know what works for you. You can identify immediately to be like, okay, I'm gonna try that because that fits into the framework of who my brand is and who I am, versus just trying to cookie cut something. Because we're all different humans. We all got here differently. So that's why it's important. You can't just copy what another business does, because all the elements of that business that make it performing, it all boils down to, and it comes from the root of who that human is. And if you know yourself, you can off top know, okay, look, I know that that's not even part of my that's not even part of my DNA. So if I add that, it'd be impotent. But this could work over here, or let me try this, or are you telling me I need to strengthen this? So I can't even take this ingredient. I need to work on all the 14 ingredients that lead up to it even before I can take it. But that comes with knowing yourself, knowing your business, who you are.
Yeah. So tonight, we're going to do something fun. We'll do a lot of fun. We're going to fuck with your mind. I know some people say we do that every class. But I'm going to give you guys, there's a tool that everybody should be using every day of their life if they're talking about building. So it's almost like you'd be hard pressed to ever go to a building site and not find a hammer or a drill. Like, those are basic tools. There's all kind of advanced tools, but it'd be hard pressed if you say, I need a hammer, somebody in a building site goes, I don't know where you can get one of those from. It'd be hard pressed to hear somebody go, I need a drill, then on a building site and go, shit, we don't have one of those, right? Because there's certain tools in building that are absolutely required. And matter of fact, I remember when I was learning how to build a house, because I took some courses when I was younger to learn how to build a house. I just thought it was the most amazing thing ever in my early 30s to learn how to build a house. I didn't stick with it because I just didn't like the lifestyle. But I still think carpenters and people who do construction are fucking amazing. And to me, they're mathematicians. I don't really just see them as just, they're not just touchy-feely type. They're not artists. Yes, a degree of art and creativity is built into it, but they're also just brilliant. I mean, just brilliant people to be around. And during that time, there was something I was going to say. They might not think I got so much into praising them. But okay, maybe I'll come back to that. But in business, there are basic requirements of just certain knowledge you need to have to build. Those who don't build, we don't really have that knowledge, right? Like, what's it called? I forgot. There's a term for when you build a roof and it has all them weird angles. It's a term for that. But there's a math for that when you're building roofs and building your angles. I can't remember the term. And somebody who doesn't build, there's no reason to even hold on to that type of math. And I think a lot of us who come from schools, universities, from jobs, who live lives of depending on something to maintain your financial stability, there's this tool we don't understand that's absolutely critical. And this tool is so critical that I would even argue that when you see social problems, we don't know this tool exists. And so we're kind of approaching a lot of social problems in a very elementary way. In addition to that, you also see how quite often when you listen to the news or you listen to the radio, or you listen to your friends, this is one major tool that's missing. So I'm going to start with The Matrix. Everybody remember the movie The Matrix, right? Okay. Let's go. I want to pull up that famous blue pill versus red pill. But I want you guys to hear this one more time for those of you. So I don't want to try to re-quote it during class and you guys go like, what the hell? I don't remember the movie. And for those of you who never even watched The Matrix, that's sad. The first one was amazing. It kind of deteriorated after I think the second one or third one, but the first one was absolutely amazing, and they're bringing it back part 4 and later on this month. But I want to play this scene out of The Matrix. So you guys are ready to queue up? Let's get it going.
Do you want to know what it is? The Matrix is everywhere. It is all around us. Even now, in this very room. You can see it when you look out your window or when you turn on your television. You can feel it when you go to work, when you go to church, when you pay your taxes. It is the world that has been pulled over your eyes to blind you from the truth. What truth? That you are a slave, Neo. Like everyone else, you were born into bondage, born into a prison that you cannot smell or taste or touch. A prison for your mind. Unfortunately, no one can be told what the Matrix is. You have to see it for yourself. This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill, the story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. Remember, all I'm offering is the truth, nothing more. Follow me.
Feedback loops. Okay. So let's jump into this real quick. The concern is The Matrix. The Matrix. The Matrix. As we all know, we've heard the movie and we've heard the story and we heard details about the movie The Matrix. And quite often, when we watched the movie, we saw Neo go into a different reality. And what I want to bring to everybody's attention is this phrase called feedback loops. And I think many of us don't understand the power of the term feedback loops. Quite often we think feedback loops is an issue of someone giving us advice or someone telling us how we can improve on how we've performed or not performed. What we're missing about feedback loops is this. Feedback loops is how human beings actually exist. Everything around you has a feedback loop. The reason you know you can breathe the air you're breathing right now, because the feedback loop, your body gives you a feedback loop that air is safe. When you drink water, the reason you know that water is clean, because you don't taste a certain flavor, that's a feedback loop. When you're in a room with a group of people, what they're talking about is a feedback loop. Everything around you provides a feedback loop. Now, your particular feedback loop, if you have a passive relationship with it, that particular feedback loop is impacting your perception of reality. It says again, your feedback loop impacts your perception of reality. This is why many of us can have all different perceptions of reality. Because based upon our feedback loop, let me give you an example. I'm going to just play with feedback loops for a minute before I'm going to the complexities of feedback loops. But I'm going to start off really simple first. So we're simple right now. Let's say you have a friend around you. And your friend, let's say you have a desire to be an entrepreneur, desire to grow in a particular field, to be a better parent, to be a better mate, whatever you choose. What you may discover is that your friend can mean the best, but your friend can't give you feedback for what they can't see. So it doesn't mean that a person has to always give you good or bad feedback. Sometimes the lack of feedback sets you up in a position where certain things about your life that can impact your life is invisible. May I add another level to that? Let's say if you're an individual that your tone changes or your energy changes when somebody gives you feedback. That energy creates an incentive for the person who give you feedback to filter what feedback they provide for you. So now that person only provides you positive feedback. The problem with positive feedback is it creates another distortion from who you are. Because a negative feedback and a positive feedback all is healthy feedback, right? But if you have unconsciously made people uncomfortable providing all forms of feedback to you, then quite often a whole portion of your reality is hidden from you. Let's say you don't realize what feedback you provide for others. Quite often, you can have a bad relationship with your family members, your children, your mate, your employees, your community, because you're not aware of what feedback you provide when you show up because you have a poor relationship with a feedback loop. A feedback loop is something that we always use to understand how to make decisions and how to adjust. Let me give you another situation. With human beings, we often have delayed feedback loops. So delayed feedback loop works like this. When you pick up a cupcake and you bite it, the immediate feedback is, good, tasty, this is well made, I must eat it again. But the delayed feedback loop is diabetes, obesity, health conditions, heart problems, right? So quite often as human beings, because many of our feedback loops with human beings are so delayed, we often lose track of causation of problems in our life. So we don't even know that we have to have long-term and short-term feedback loops. Then there's, I think the key word, let me look, because I wrote some of this stuff down because I get some of these phrases. There's reinforcing feedback loops and balancing feedback loops. So balancing feedback loops is how do I get you back to feeling comfortable? How you get you back to being like your thermostat. That's a balancing feedback loop, right? The thermostat measures the temperature, says it's a little too cold, warms the room up, so it gets a certain temperature, cuts it off. But for poor people or people who are stuck in certain patterns, it's called reinforcing feedback loops. This also happens in fashion. When something happens in your life that reinforces a mindset over and over and over again. So there's reinforcement feedback loops. So for example, if you're in the hood, there's a lot of things in that community that will send mental feedbacks to you to keep you in the place you're in. This is why it's so hard to have change for a human being. Change is like changing out of the matrix, because when you decide to change, you have to break all the reinforcement feedback loops that are keeping you in the place you're in. And when those feedback loops are hitting your brain, let me explain something to you real quick. When your brain experiences feedback loops, there is no way in the world you will know it's good or bad. It doesn't come off as right or wrong. Quite often, human beings have said, well, it's normal. This is what everybody does. That's because your feedback loop is reinforcing the same message within your perception. And so to you, it feels quite normal and quite consistent. So it's not a matter of, and matter of fact, you can go online and reinforce that feedback loop, right? Reinforcement feedback loop means that almost, like for example, let's say, I haven't been in the hood for years, but I have a different feedback loop system. If I was to take my feedback loop values and walk into the community, quite often I would be very disruptive and probably even irritate people. They wouldn't even be able to say, where are you coming from? This doesn't even make sense to me, because they have a group of feedback loops that reinforces their reality. Now, I'm not going to go, because the feedback loops can go really, really far. I'll give you an example of how far it can go. In feedback loops, once you understand feedback loops and then you understand that incentives is a part of feedback loops, that you can use how through incentives you're giving human beings feedback. So what does that mean? Let's give you an example of how the law may do it. The law may decide that crime is getting beyond the margin. There's no such thing as a perfect society. You're always managing margins, right? So society realizes that crime is getting beyond a certain margin. What the law may do is court may steal something from Macy's, and they give him 5 years in prison. You might say that's unfair. Well, the law says that it's unfair to him, but it's fair to everybody else. This is how you manage feedback loops. So a lot of times when people are screaming, that's unfair, unfairness has to exist for the fairness of the majority. That's the rule of incentives to feedback, right? This is critical because when you decide to build systems or you decide to run a business, quite often feedback loops are destroyed. Let me go back a little bit further. Let me go back a little bit. So Pastor Chris kind of sparked this discussion the other day. He called me and said, "Don, I want to introduce a basic idea to my church, and I want to introduce him to some basic business principles. What do you think I should talk about?" I said, He said, "I'm thinking about marketing." I said, "Well, here's the problem with marketing. If you're going to teach marketing, you have to teach." I said, "I think it'd be better that you teach feedback loops." And I didn't think he really got the gist of what I was saying. Quite often in business, one of the reasons human beings can't receive great feedback is because when we receive feedback, we twist the information for what we want it to be. We can't accept what it is. So if I tell you something in feedback, your brain, because what you want it to sound like, you will twist it to make it sound, so the kind of the distortion of should kicks in, right? So if I said, "Hey, I came to your business and I thought customer service wasn't that good," your brain says, "No, it should have been good. I know that person. I trust. I know I did what I was supposed to do. You should like it because I provide you this perfect service. You should have perceived." You're not even hearing the customer saying what they said and then receive the feedback in its purest form. It doesn't mean that you have to immediately solve the problem, but in that feedback, you compound the information to eventually see something that you're not showing up to or something that you're missing. But if you destroy the feedback loop because of your not feeling like you're good enough, because it makes you uncomfortable, or you have a bad relationship with feedback loops, or you don't even know how to find good feedback loops, then when the information comes in, what you'll find yourself doing is, no, I want to do a marketing campaign. I want a beautiful website, a beautiful logo, and I want some fancy words. But based upon what? You don't have a feedback loop. You don't know your customer. Well, I listen to my customers all the time. No. You don't have a feedback loop. It's a big difference. Huge difference. You can hear your customers, but if you're translating to a should, or are you twisting to what you want the world, how you want the world to show up? Are you very strong in some political or social belief system that when things come to you, you try to filter it through your belief system and you corrupt the feedback? At the end of the day, you wonder why your business is not aligned with your customer. Is because you cannot receive a pure feedback loop. Your employees, quite often, if you want to maximize decision making, you want to maximize the amount of information you can take in, right? But in order for your employees to be able to pour into the problem with you, or your customers and everybody else around you pour into information, you have to have clean communication. Without clean communication, people can't contribute to the problem. Quite often, we have a breakdown in even internal problem solving because we have a problem with a internal feedback loop. So if you're not properly communicating with people and you wonder why people are missing their cues and there's a breakdown in the system and there's a breakdown in extension of the ideas and breakdown in execution, there's a breakdown in the feedback loop. We don't realize at every point of our life, we should be monitoring feedback. Let me show you another situation. Do you realize that you can reduce police officers if you improve the city's feedback loop? Let me say this again. Do you realize you can reduce police officers if you improve the city's feedback loop? Let me give you an example. A sidewalk. It's just an abstract piece of cement on ground. Means nothing. But a sidewalk is a feedback loop. I said, Donna, what do you mean a sidewalk is a feedback loop? All right, let me help you. So you're walking on the street. There's no windows. And there's alleys you can't see down. Very few lights. Do you feel safe? The feedback for that street said, no, you shouldn't feel safe. The criminal is incentivized. He's got a feedback loop that if he robs you on the street, it's a high chance he can get away with it. There's less eyes to see what's going on. But let's say you remove some of the alleys. Let's say you open up some shops. Let's say you get more foot traffic walking down the street. Let's say you put more windows so people can look out their windows and see what's happening. You just remove the incentive for the criminal to act on criminal behavior, right? You can literally design a city where you can reduce crime by the actual design of the city because the actual design of the city incentivizes behavior. Schools. It's not about going in and intervening on this bad kid, this good kid, this bully kid, this non-bully kid, this soft kid, this strong kid. None of that stuff. How is the school designed to incentivize learning? These are feedbacks that are happening around you all the time, but quite often we get caught into the players and we don't realize that. So it's this thing called, I'm not going to teach this tonight, but it's this thing called complex adaptive systems, where systems that work on their own without any leading player, similar to how your brain works, right? You have numerous neurons in your brain, but they all collaborate in a smart way to produce you, right? That's a complex adaptive system. The way those systems work so well together, I would even argue that systemic racism is a complex adaptive system, right? It works without any leading player, or there's no head of the system. It's not a linear system. It's a very complex mesh of collaboration, unconscious collaboration, but conscious collaboration, right? Well, in order for that system to work, what gels that system together is the feedback loops. Because the way that people get messaging through this complex network is as we provide feedback to each other through the loops, right? If you understand feedbacks, you will also understand how actions you take in your business have long-term impact on your company. So, for example, let's say somebody kidnaps somebody and you pay the kidnappers. You just incentivize through a feedback loop, it's okay to go kidnap again, right? So one of the reasons you don't pay the kidnappers, or you try to avoid paying the kidnappers, because you're not trying to create a feedback to everybody, hey, come get my kids. Come get kids that are people in my same status, right? When you understand feedback loops, you have to understand how every action and what it means to the group of people you're trying to impact long term. That no action happens in a bubble. Guys get where I'm going with this? Feedback loops, because I think we shrunk in feedback to just, I did something, somebody said, well, how did I do? You go, well, let me give you my opinion. It's way deeper than that. You have to, if you want to control your world and be able to shift your reality, you have to pay attention to all the feedback touch points in your life that's driving your belief systems. If you're not willing to let go of those systems, then you're stuck in your matrix. It's almost that simple. It's almost that simple. And you got to also pay attention to the feedback that you're providing for people. Quite often, when you're providing people with feedback, you don't realize that often you're shaping the type of people that's in your world. Like a lot of times, it's easy for us to run from problems by blaming other people. Oh, the reason my life is bad is because of this, because they hate me, they don't like me, they don't accept me, they don't respect me, don't care for. But we often take ourselves off the table of examination. Who we should be examining first and always first is ourselves. Remember, radical responsibility. Take responsibility for all things that happen to you, even if it's not your fault. Because then you can start to see how your feedback loop is creating the reality. So let's just say you're around a group of people and you guys have the best fun ever, but no one's really ever allowed to, you're not allowed to really make personal comments. Because last time you made a personal comment, somebody blew up. That's a horrible circle of people to be around. A healthy circle should be able to have a full, broad, respectfully, right? Now, you can take too much feedback. It can come in too fast, too much, too quick, and to the point your system is shut down, right? But if you develop a healthy relationship with feedback loops, you'll be surprised. You can almost stop coming to, coming to this class is more important than just learning. It's about the relationships. But the class, you can almost predict a lot of these lessons we're teaching in class if you understand feedback loops. Feedback loop is the number one tool an entrepreneur has to use. When you see a master entrepreneur, they're so curious because they're listening for feedback loops. They're looking for things that they're watching. When they walk in a room, Rain Free is a close friend of both of ours. And Rain Free built a multi-million-dollar catering company. And when Rain removed herself from the technical position of doing the work, Rain's main job was to walk in an environment and just study feedback loops. And she'll watch everything from how a person grabbed a cup, how long they drank that cup, what they do after the cup, what cup fit best in their hand, what cup did they drop down and put to the side. She paid attention to like how often they go back and get another drink, right? Who do they have a conversation with? Because what she was doing is she was reading feedback loops to know how to show up and serve her customers. Well, so many of us walk into these rooms and we're too busy trying to prove ourselves, validate ourselves, do business, which I don't know what that is, do business to a point that we ignore the feedback loops. Every opportunity you have, and here's the thing, when you first start, you start off first with the elementary level is good feedback, bad feedback. As you become more advanced and learn to listen to people beyond their words, all feedback is good feedback. But that's really advanced. Because when you first start, you're gonna have a lot of people giving you advice. They're nowhere near they're nowhere near your customer, your focus, or where you're going. But when you start to learn how to read people through their emotional communication as instead of the words that's coming out of their mouth, you realize that all feedback is valuable feedback, right? But we don't realize by being so defensive or being so protective or even this victim mindset that's become so popular in society right now, it's smothering our feedback loops. Your feedback loops can come from somebody. Okay, for example, I've had individuals in my life that weren't the most friendliest person to black people. They didn't say the right things. They just didn't show up in the right ways. They just didn't do the nicest things ever, but gave me some of the best feedback I've ever received. But quite often, we want feedback to be packaged and presented only the way we're most comfortable. But in addition to that, you have to pay attention to like what shows you're watching on television. What do you do in your free time? The bed you're laying. I'm talking about everything in your life is a feedback loop. Like I had an injury with my shoulder, and I went to the doctor and I said, "Hey doc, man, my shoulder's bothering me." And I gave her, she's like, "Well, raise your arm this way, raise your arm that way." Which she's like looking for these immediate feedback loops. And that stuff. She sent me to a therapist, and the therapist she sent me to was too generic. So Later on, I got a chance to run across another therapist, and I realized that that question of my shoulders hurting, how complex that is. Because I could be sleeping bad. I could have neck problems. I could have undertrained a certain muscle. I could be doing something in my everyday activity that if I just correct that behavior, all of a sudden that changes, right? So that means that in order for me to fix my shoulder, I had increased my awareness of my feedback loop around my back of my shoulder. And once I did that, I realized, oh, okay, I'm sleeping in bad posture. Like I love to sleep on my stomach. Not a good idea, right? I was lifting weights, but I was developing the front of my shoulder, but at the back of my shoulder. Not a good idea, right? I'm aging. That's another issue, right? Those are all these different things that are feedback loops, but if I'm not aware of these things, I can't even show up to it. Another example, we're working out, and this guy got it from Shabisha. So when Shabisha first started training, I'm gonna share a little bit, Shabisha, I don't get no details. When she first started training, she went to the gym, and she came back, this was one day after class, she says, Nana, I don't think I'm ever doing this shit again. That shit was so hard, I don't even know why I even went to the gym. She said she went back the next day and sat in her car. And no, she said she drove around the gym numerous times because she just couldn't convince herself to stop. She eventually stopped and got in there seconds before her training was supposed to start. At the time when she was training, her feedback loop told her it can't be done. This is real talk. It cannot be done, Shabisha. This is it. And I sat with her. No, Mashama talked to her. Her father talked to her. I talked to her. And I'm sure a host of y'all talked to her. And Cassandra talked to her. And she ran the co-part, she didn't talk to us all at the same time. There was hours between the conversations, and each conversation was a copy and paste of the previous conversation. Meaning that no matter what you said to her, she was stuck with her feedback. Mm-hmm. Her feedback loop said, Nana, I'm going to get hurt if I do what this trainer asked me to do. Right? Fast forward to today. I walk in the office today. She says, Nana, I'm lunging now. I'm lifting heavier weight now. I went past my trainer's expectations now. I'm doing all this stuff and this, and the other, right? And I said, you know, it's interesting how the body works. Working out is a delayed feedback loop. A lot of times when you start a new system in your business, it may seem irrelevant, useless, and zero impact. Just like, you know, for example, if you say, I'm gonna lose 40 pounds, no matter what you do today, it has nothing to do with that 40 pounds. Right? That 40 pounds will not be felt in that workout today. It's just not possible. Right? You can work out 6 hours straight, sweat, everything. That 40 pounds is still waiting on your ass tomorrow morning. Right? It's the consistency. Right? And in that consistency, you have a slow feedback loop that's happening. Really slow. Because you could be doing a bad workout, sweating, tired, and 6 months from now, you ain't lost 1 pound. Right? Because you're still eating similar. Like you might think you're eating different, but you don't have the feedback loop because you're unconscious of your eating habits, right? What you'll find is that, but when you're at the beginning, so a couple things. One, feedback loops are not often fast, it's a slow process. Sometimes when you first start a change, it may feel like nothing's happening. And it requires consistency and what some people would argue faith, right? Two, when you're at the beginning of a change and are at the beginning of a process, remember that the reason motivation often doesn't work because it's going to run up against feedback loops. So you can be motivated, I'm going to change my body, I'm going to work out really, really hard, I'm going to get dressed. She probably went shopping before she went the first time. She probably signed the paperwork, took home a package, made her a little smoothie before she went to the gym the first time, right? She hits that wall, pow! Her brain goes to instant feedback loops. Oh, you can't. No, it's not possible. I told her, isn't it amazing that when you couldn't feel anything, when it felt impossible, that today actually exists? Your brain can't see tomorrow. Your brain can't see that possible difference because your brain is flooded with reinforcing feedback loops that say you can't do it. You're not supposed to change. This is why poor people stay poor. Because they believe, even when you listen to, like, okay, so now that I've economically grown and I've, climbed out of the poor category, I now hear how bad the language is that around why poverty is almost a destiny. There's a language, the rich people, which implies the poor people. No, it's just a state, right? Because rich is relative, right? I'm not talking about rich like, if you're happy financially with what you make and you have the quality of life you want, then you're rich to you. That's all that matters. It could be $100,000 a year, it could be $500,000 a year, it could be $1 million a year, it could be $10 million a year. Whatever fits the quality of life that you're looking for, that's the goal, what I call success, not money. Please, that's the most techiest form of success. But quite often, when you're in a state of poverty, you don't realize how many reinforcing conversations. They don't like us. They did this to us. The rich people, the one percenters, the government, Trump, police officers, the schools suck. Everybody sucks.
Hey, when you were talking, it made me think about the feedback loop of church that I grew up around. So I grew up around this church, which is kind of like a franchise. All the church, there's thousands of churches in different neighborhoods, but wherever you lived, there was a church near your house, near your neighborhood. So you were assigned to this particular church that was in your neighborhood. So we grew up on 64th and Mac, and on Maxwell and Brookdale. So the church we were assigned was on 55th. So you grow up as everyone in the neighborhood grew up in that church. And guess what? It was poor. It was a poor neighborhood. So it was poor pastors, poor elders, poor everybody in the church. So the language in the church from the preacher on down was that money is bad. Money is bad. Money is bad. God's going to get us later. God got us later because, don't worry about the money now. Like, it's harder for a camel to do all the shit that camels do anyway. So just don't worry about it. It was poverty mindset, and the feedback loop was that it's okay that nobody got money. The poor people are bad, and God's going to bless us, and we're going to get all the stuff we want when we enter into the paradise. It wasn't until I left the church or whatever, I got old enough to do my own thing, when I met people from the same religion who just lived in the good neighborhoods, from the same religion. But their feedback loop was, money is good as long as you're balanced, as long as you can still show up to the church and for the church. I'm like, what the, the same. And the thing is, the church I went to, they would even have big conventions every year, thousands of people. But your conventions was also assigned based on neighborhoods. So it was all of East Oakland would be with all of Hunters Point and all of some other hood. And so it would be 1,000 people from the hood. So that language was still the same. So the conventions for the rich people in my religion was the feedback loop was different than was in mine. And so that can go on forever. That's why it's so important for you to have a diverse group of perspectives around you, a diverse group of friends. Be open, because you never know that what you want is outside your current feedback loop right now. Like, what you want is outside your current feedback loop, because if you're not irritated sometimes within your feedback loop, then it's already conformed and adapted to you and who you are, and
Equilibrium.
It's just, it's just the water's level, right? But if you don't get splashes around you like, hey, damn, you got that in my face, or what's going on? Like, if you don't have that to where it irritates you, arouse you up, or make you think later and like, wait a minute, what the fuck was he talking about? I don't agree with that. But if you don't have that, then you're stuck. It's stuck. And
Matrix.
And you'll never understand why you ain't made it, blown up, popped off, grew your business, anything in terms of growth.
And so back in when he was saying in the story, it's like you feel this matrix, you feel this different reality all the time. You just don't know how to get there. Mm-hmm. Like you've been in rich neighborhoods, you can feel that energy. You can feel there's a difference between you and, like, if you went to an event where a lot of successful people in the room, you can feel there's something different, but you can't access it, right? And the reason you can't access it because it's beyond your feedback loops. Hold on a second, let this go by a little bit. you don't realize how much, like even when you feel things in society that you can't articulate, the reason you can't integrate with it, impact it, change it, or respond to it is because your feedback loops blocks you from it. It's the wall. So remember he said, take the blue pill and go back to sleep and live the life you've always been living, which is stay within your feedback loop and nothing changes. But if you take this red pill, I'm going to change your feedback loop. And when I change your feedback loop, you're going to realize how far this rabbit hole goes. And it's like once you open up your mind to stepping outside your feedback loop, you realize, oh my God, information is vast and it never ends. But if you're stuck in your feedback loop is often contaminated with ideas of certainty. And so a lot of things you believe in with that feedback loop gives you a sense of certainty. You're like, I understand how the world works. I understand why people are doing this. Now, if you could tell like the old men and old women in those systems, they're like, yo, I know what I know. I've seen what I've seen. I'm going to tell you what it is, right? They're victims of certainty. But when you step outside your feedback loop, you realize how much so when somebody says, most people, that phrase cannot possibly exist. Outside of they breathe and they die. But if you say most people's opinion, it's almost, you can't possibly know that when you come outside of your feedback loop. But when you're stuck in your feedback loop, you're trying to read the world through your feedback loop, which also, it puts a filter on the world, which often gives you a false information on what's happening around you. Right? It's so huge. And let's go back to the hood real quick. So you're walking on a creek, you're walking down the street. Look at the lighting on the streets. Look at the level of trash. Look at the houses. Look at the grass. Look at the noise on the streets. Look at the behavior of the people and the way they dressed. Listen to the sound in the community, right? Now, I don't want y'all going home and going, good white people, bad black people. That's not what it is. What you see is the difference between the two is time. Time. Same people, but time. One person has time and resources to invest in solutions. The other one is just moving and dropping things behind them. Meaning they're not cutting their grass because they're working harder hours, right? And they're working jobs on lower pay. And when they get free time, they want to just party and hang out, right? They feel impotent, so quite often they're acting out, and the driving reflects that, right? The behavior reflects that. The kids are rebelling because they feel like society's not investing in me, so I'm not investing back in society. This is just all human nature. This is not a racial dynamic. It's the stupidest shit ever. But if you understand in these other communities, the communities are a reflection of resources. So when you have resources, I got somebody cut my grass. Like, for example, as soon as I got enough money, I bought this lawnmower before I had money. Then when I gained money, that lawnmower died in my garage. I gave it to somebody because I didn't touch that lawnmower another goddamn day in my life. And I've already started thinking about what would it cost to have somebody come take out this garbage for me every other day. I'm literally removing responsibilities, right? Well, the more I remove responsibilities, the easier it is to maintain my house, my neighborhood, my community, right? So the reinforcing message, so when a young kid walks in this, now this is where it gets cold-blooded. This is where somehow we have to figure out how to curb this effort. When a kid walks to the neighborhood and they see paint peeling, broken down fences, broken down cars, trash, dead cats, stray dogs, people driving old cars parked everywhere, things are crazy. The reinforcing message is, you're supposed to be poor. This is your destiny. And even when you make money, you'll tell poor stories as you climb, often becoming the chain that's stopping you from climbing too high. Because in order for you to climb high, you got to let go of those poor stories, those poor identities, those poor ideas that kept you down. And quite often when you let those poor ideas go, you feel like you're divorcing a family and the complex relationships you have. Not realizing that those relationships are all poisoned by the feedback loop. You have to learn to love them without being them. You know, like I think Jay-Z, Irk told me, Jay-Z phrase is, in order for me to help you, I can't be poor to help the poor.
Yeah, you can't save the poor if you wanted them. So I got rich and
Yeah.
gave back to them. That's the win-win.
Yeah, yeah. And so at the end of the day, we don't realize that the poverty is a feedback loop, language, a culture, a belief system. It is not a coincidence or a God-given destiny. Like there's so much money in the United States, it's ridiculous. It's so, think about this. There's 40 million black people in the United States. If every black person gave you $1 every 2 years, I want you guys to just imagine how crazy this could be.
Hey, I didn't want to go to my sister's for Thanksgiving. I wanted to stay home. I had a stressful few months. I just wanted to chill. And I knew my sister, she's all the way with the shit, and everybody she invites is just gonna be that kind of situation. So my girl was like, I just want a plate. So I'm like, all right, let's go get a plate. So smash up there, go get a plate. 2 feuding cousins who vowed to, like, if they saw each other in the street, it was on sight. But it was 3 years ago, so everybody kind of thought it's society. They thought it's society. So my sister decided to invite both of them. So I'm sitting on the couch, and in walks both cousins, like separately. So they sitting on the couch, talking to me, like, "Hey, uncle, how you doing? Cool, good." So cousin one asks a question to him, and he says, "Shut the fuck up! Don't say nothing to me." Bitch ass, you a bitch ass, and I'm like, oh. So then they go back and forth, and they just redo the whole threat, and I say nothing because I already tried to intervene before and solve the situation, and I say nothing. I just look at my girl, I'm like, see, this is why we shouldn't have came. So then one gets angry and goes in the back. So the cousin who told him to shut the fuck up, you a bitch ass nigga, woo, says, was I wrong? To me. I said, you're asking me, are you wrong? So I said, because he's like, I'm all about loyalty. And what he did was not loyalty. And I'm from an old school. I'm from a certain school of loyalty. I said, time out. You asked me. I said, number one, your loyalty is corrupted by your emotions. And loyalty is relative. And he's like, man, you talking Chinese to me, man. What the fuck you saying? You talking Chinese. What the fuck you saying? You know what I said? Nothing. And let it be. Y'all gonna kill each other? Do it. Because I can't even explain to you no more. I can't even speak to you at the level no more to get you to listen to me because you won't. So y'all gonna just do what you're gonna do. Because at a certain point when it comes to feedback loops, vibrationally, shit sounds Chinese. To me, I believe he's right. It did sound like Chinese. Because at a certain level, that's why people don't come around no more, or people who get rich, or they don't teach this shit or come kick it no more because sometimes it becomes such a separation that the feedback loop doesn't even work.
It won't let it in. Even when because once again, I give you feedback, but your feedback loop says, well, this is what it should mean. And so you only hear what you can possibly hear or what you want to hear. You haven't learned to become so self-aware that you learn to purify your feedback loop. So at the end of the day, when somebody's successful trying to give you game, you're poisoning the game because of your feedback loop has a different interpretation. It's also called cascade, information cascade. Information cascade works like this. Most human beings, this is the truth. Okay, this is something we know in leadership roles. Most human beings have opinion, but most human beings are not committed to their opinion. Most human beings are not committed. Like most people might say, I believe in climate change. You say, okay, what is that? How does it work? They can't tell you. I don't trust a vaccine. Okay, so tell me about epidemiology. They can't tell you nothing about that, right? Most people, I don't, the police are corrupt. Oh, okay, tell me about police. Or like Josh Father asked me, what do you think about Obama? I said, I don't want to tell you, bro. I don't even know who he is. Like I seen him on television talk, but I don't know. I never ran a nation before, and I never been in a cabin with him. I don't even know the information come across his desk. So how can I even try to interpret, right? But so because we don't own our opinion, most human beings rely upon other people's opinion to make our opinion. It's called information cascade. So But the problem with the information cascade is that's also how. Is that a buzz sound? Is that the speaker? Is it loose? No. Tip of the microphone just quick. Just. No, if it's not coming from that, that's what it's coming from. Is he? Oh. The woofer? Yeah. Oh, then check the woofer connection. Both sides. It connects to. Just 1 second, y'all. We had this weird little hum sound. We're trying to make sure it doesn't go crazy on us for 1 second. 1 second. Okay, no, we're good. Okay, so information cascade. Most people who think they have an opinion, only a few people are opinion leaders. Most people are not opinion leaders. That's why if you're ever in a room and somebody's arguing their opinion, just chill. Like sometimes just let the shit go, because they're not. Often when people give their opinions, it's not about their opinion. It's about some feeling they're having. So if you respond to the opinion, you're going down a rabbit hole that goes nowhere. So a lot of times when people are voicing their opinion, just give them space to express that, right? Because when somebody's voicing an opinion, it doesn't change anything. It's just their fucking opinion. But most human beings, because we're always looking for cues from others, which is feedback loops, to drive our opinions, we also take those same cascade of information to pick up bad habits. So for example, society always knows that in order to curb behavior of crime, once again, go back to crime again, that, like for example, let's say people are speeding their cars all the time. Then society realizes that, okay, I can't bust everybody that speeds. So what we have to do is we have to take somebody like R. Kelly, throw all the books at him. But R. Kelly, it's not about R. Kelly. It's about child molestation in the black community. And what you're trying to do is deter that behavior, right? Because the information cascade, because every time another R. Kelly gets away with it, like, right? That's communicating that it's okay, right? And so, or let's just say, let's go back to the donuts. So a group of kids get in their car and they're doing donuts in the street. Now, there's two things that's happening there. There's a perception bias, meaning that we have our perception because we're adults, we own property, we're invested in society. So we're looking at the cost that it's caused in the community, right? And it's also the psychological damage. Those who have a neuroscience background understand the psychological cost you have to pay for that as well. But for the youth who have a different perspective, it's statements of status, right? Mm-hmm. So if I wanted to reduce like tire burning in a block, it's not about running up and going, okay, we just had helicopters around them and whatever went down. It's about removing the feedback loops that reinforces the behavior. You guys get where I'm going with this? And so at the end of the day, once you understand feedback loops, you start seeing solutions to problems in your community that you couldn't see before because you thought problems was because of bad players and good players. Or you thought problems was because no money got money. You thought problems was just an issue of racism. You think problems is tied to sexism. And you don't realize, once you see feedback loops, you realize that most human beings are not thinking. They're not smart enough. They're just really complex adaptive systems unconsciously collaborating based upon information cascades. All right? And so once you understand the power of information cascade, the way information moves to society, then you realize if I want to change things, for example, if you want to change the behavior of people fast, you change the influencers, the opinion leaders. Opinion leaders change human behavior faster than anybody else. It's this thing called I'll give y'all one more tip, because I'm kind of going far to the left. It's called Overton window. And Overton window is what Trump was doing. People missed it. So what is the Overton window? Overton window is in society, there's a window when things can happen. So, for example, an idea could be on the fringes. It could be radical. Or it could be fringes, extreme, radical to policy, right? But there's many things that we decided today is policy, but at one point it was radical, if not on the fringes, right? What the Republicans do, and this is a brilliant strategy if you ever pay attention to this, they will advocate for something extreme, which shifts the window, which makes something that's radical policy. Or if they went for something radical, it would make it even longer for the change. So they ask for something on the fringes that just seems like, what the hell? That's insane, Trump, right? That's crazy. But then something that you thought was radical last year, all of a sudden becomes easy policy, right? Once you guys start understanding feedback loops, this world is totally different to you. Now you start to see, oh, I can impact the community by impacting the feedback loops. Remember I said, if you want to change the ecosystem, intervention costs more money. But if you can hit the keystones is feedback loops. Y'all, I don't know if y'all get what I'm saying. This is like the most dopest shit ever. Because a lot of us think that changing the impact is, shouting people down, going to Thanksgiving with your family, cussing them out. They're irrelevant. They're part of an information cascade. If you go to your whole family, like, okay, my wife, father, we were at this dinner and he's arguing conspiracies, ancient historical, Roman, Christianity, Turkish, all the way down to crime in the neighborhood. I swear to God, he made this string that just went so linear and just cut through all the randomness of time and went from here to here perfectly. And guess what I did the whole time? Yo, that was nice. Yeah, okay. Man, thanks for having me. This is beautiful, man. I didn't know you was that deep, bro. This is amazing. His opinion doesn't mean anything. It's not part of the change. If I'm going to challenge anything, I would challenge a powerful opinion leader who's having quick, hard, intense impact. But I don't challenge people on the streets. You can say shit I totally disagree with, and I'll be like, yep.
You can make a booger talk.
That's
You can
amazing.
make a booger talk. Yep.
Because in the day, they're part of an information cascade. They're not the focus. And so a lot of times we're burning ourselves out, mad at everybody, find ourselves in isolation, and realize we have zero impact because we don't went whack-a-mole crazy.
Mm-hmm. And it's opinions. Nobody, like very few people on this planet are complete experts in their field anyway. So
Very
it's
few
all
circles of genius.
it's all opinions. So you take opinions with grace like that and see if there's seeds that can help you expand or grow and improve, and that's it. Like it's not an emotional tap to you. We got to get better as a society, as applying that to what we're doing in business. So in business, I was watching that interview with Nicki Minaj about how she's on a record label and there's some fucking amazing artists that they dropped because they were extremely talented, but they weren't popular. And how she's saying, man, hold on to your talented artists because it's fading away, because it's becoming, popularity is starting to trump talent. And it's sad as fuck, but it's happening. So she's like, soon the whole generation, she's like, in my day, it was talented artists. In your day, it's popular artists. But if you listen to the context of all of that, what's popularity? It's someone or something or some idea or some brand that's tapped in to several feedback loops of influence that tells the crowd that this is the shit. So how can we learn from that in business? Do we just ignore that game and be like, nope, I'm just gonna go with creating dope ass products and dope clothing and people got to get it? Or do I have to say, you know what? How can I expand my knowledge and step outside of this and start tapping into connecting with certain feedback loops that have a pulse on the market, have a pulse on the people, my demographic, the people who I want to buy my product.
Any questions before? Because we're going to move into emails, but I really wanted to sit with feedback loops for a minute because, and those of you who just think you got it but don't get it, ask questions. Don't sit at home trying to protect your ego. So those of you online, Shabisha, if there's any folks you want to echo some of their questions, go ahead.
I actually have a question.
Go ahead.
and excuse me for coming in late. So I came in midway through the
Yes.
feedback loop conversation. So an example of a really powerful feedback loop right now that I could like see if I were to look would be what?
Everything.
Everything.
Anything your body uses to tell you what is right, up, down, left, forward. When you eat food, that's a feedback loop, right? Your stomach, when you fool, is a feedback loop. And when you're breathing air, if it doesn't smell, it says, oh, it's safe to breathe. Take a deep breath, feedback loop, right? But long-term feedback loop is the air was actually contaminated, now you have asthma. Your children have asthma, right? That's a long-term feedback loop. Feedback loops are always around you. The thing is that because we put feedback loops in this little tunnel of conversations, when feedback loop is everything around you that's shaping your perception of your reality. So, for example, when I say Casamont is criminal in Silicon Valley cities, because there's cities around Silicon Valley, we call it the cities of Silicon Valley, Casamont should not exist because that feedback loop psychologically to all the people who have to pass, have to go to school, who have to go pick up their children, is sending them a message who they can be. That means that the conditions of the streets, the paint lines on the streets, the sidewalks, the trash, the stuck bubble gum, the oil, the people working on their cars in front of the neighborhood, the bottles of trash sitting on the street. When you hit Oakland, let's say you were born Midwest in a nice city that everybody knew everybody and everybody took care of their neighborhoods, and you landed in Livermore. Somehow it's a plane airport in Livermore. You landed there, boom. Get off the plane, you visit your family, go walk for some ice cream through a nice park late at night. You guys sit in the middle of the park while it's still dark. Have whole family, great conversation. Go in the house. Nobody locks the door. Everybody goes to bed. Great. No one tells you where Oakland is, and you get in the car. As soon as you wrap around 580, you see all that trash everywhere. You say, "Oh shit, we're not in Kansas anymore." Instantly. Feedback loop is being fed to you fast. The side of the roads, the deterioration of grass, the trash, the screech marks, the driving insanity, just all the design elements are giving you psychological messages of your reality and reinforcing that. If you're not conscious of that, then you're just a blind victim of that, and it shapes your reality to the point you don't know you have another reality. Well, why did we bring that up? Because in business and in marketing, people often think that marketing is about cute material that's going to go out, right? But marketing is about your psychological relationships with your customers and your employees, right? And if you're not paying attention, if you don't stand for, if you don't have values, beliefs, ideas, then you might as well go to 99 cent marketing. Get your 99 cent logo and a 99 cent website, because marketing is really just using imagery to translate deeper communication and deeper ideas. But in order for you to be connected to have, so if you have a rich conversation with somebody, you have to read the person you're talking to, right? And you have to not only just read what's coming out their mouth, you gotta look at the way they walked in the room, how they're dressed, with their hair. You gotta listen to their stories, their history, and that's giving you some info. That's a feedback loop of who's in front of you. So then you know what words to use to create energy change in their body and their responses, right? But that means you have enough empathy, which is a rich feedback loop. That's what empathy is. It's a form of a feedback loop, right? But with our customers, we're too busy trying to defend, protect, or feel victimized that we smother our feedback loop. So when customers come in, we're not extracting information that we can feed to a designer to give us a dope branding campaign. Because why? We don't. That's corrupt. Or the customer, we let the customer talk to us. We believe in that. Oh yeah, I believe in the customer. Give me the information. I read all their little documents. But when I read it, I'm twisting it with what I think is what I want it to be, not what it is. And by the time I give it to the designer, to the marketing company to design for me, they're not designing for the customer. They're designing for me to make me feel comfortable, and I wonder why I can't sell any products because I'm only talking to myself. There's a rule that says if you want to speak in front of a crowd, mirror the crowd. Right? But how do you mirror the crowd when you won't receive that feedback? Because that's all it is. That's all you're doing is receiving feedback from the crowd, right? But what we do is we go in front of the crowd and we're going to do Kevin Hart in front of everybody. I did that real quick. You get what I'm going with this? Like, this is something critical because we don't realize. And then we say we want to change our city, right? Like, what's happening with Oakland? you should be able to see it before it happens if you watch the feedback loops.
Yo, smart folks, highly intelligent folks, high IQ folks, graduated degrees, masters, bachelors, PhDs, sometimes can have the most challenging time with this topic right here, because a lot of times they feel like, well, I've accomplished, I've made it, I got my degree, I'm super smart, or I'm this. I don't need that big of a feedback loop. I don't need it because I know what the fuck I'm doing. I'm the best. I'm this. I went to the best schools, or people around me telling me I'm the shit. So your feedback loop becomes so impotent, so small that you barely listen to people who tell you that you only listen to people who telling you that you're dope, or you're the shit, or you popping, or you're amazing, or you're a genius. And if you hear that too much, then you overvalue or overinflate your value. So now when people give you feedback, if it's like oil and water, I don't want to hear that shit. I don't want to hear that shit. Like, once we understand that where we are is a reflection of what we know, then fuck, I need all the input I can get. I need all the help I can get. I'll take feedback from everywhere. Even the dumb shit. Okay, all right, can I extract something from it? Okay, one word, I got you. We gotta be that hungry. We gotta be that hungry. The homeless man give me game. If the homeless man gave me some game, what can I extract from the homeless man in this moment? Because we here. That's how hungry we gotta be. If not, we have that too cool syndrome, to where we too fucking cool, we know it all, and we not trying to hear nobody. And we think that at a certain point in time, shit's just gonna blow up for us, for our business. And it's not. It's never gonna do it, because we're never changing. We're not taking the pill. What we're doing is we actually taking the blue pill. And the blue pill is saying, like Cousin in the movie, who was like, look, I know this steak ain't real, but it tastes hella good, so I don't give a fuck. And that's how we moving in life. Like, I'm gonna blind myself to my failures. I'm gonna blind myself to the feedback loop, and just taste what tastes and feels good in the moment.
And that's okay. So I'm gonna touch a very uncomfortable space. I feel a certain kind of way because I'm me. Somebody said that. I'm just using that as a generic phrase. I feel this way because I'm me, Nana. This is who I am. This is who I believe I am. This is who I know I am. This is why I was born this way. We don't realize, no, feedback loops. Your choices and mates are feedback loops. It's not gay. That's not a gay challenge. Please, for our gay students, I'm not making that argument. But we don't really know who we are, because we're always changing. We're never going to be the same. You start off, you even have chemicals in your body that causes changes in who you are. You're always evolving, right? So when you plant these flags, you're creating your own limitations, right? You should be open to discovering who you can become at all times. Who can I become? Where can I venture to? What can I experience? What can I change? How can I grow? Not how do I plant my flag? Because a lot of us when you plant your flag, you're solidifying your feedback loop. Because who you are often happen. Okay, so if you young people at a certain age are so moldable, it's insane. They're so moldable, it's insane. And if their feedback loops hit them by their peers, it's even proven. Look at all the neuroscience, psychology. If their peers are pushing a certain message into their head based upon the circles they're in, it can literally flip the switch and they go down. If they have a choice of A and B, they can go either way based upon their peers, right? So a lot of times when that same person who flipped the switch at the age of 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, by the time they're 19, they learn to articulate who they are. This is just who I am. There's no such thing, right? And then we validate them like, no, that's who he say he is. That's who he is. If that's the case, then why are we even talking about change right now? And our basic desire is to change. So why do we solidify ourselves in who we are? We should always be open. It doesn't mean that you have to there's no throwing out the baby with the bathwater. It's your choice. It's not up to somebody else to make the choice for you, but you're not limited. So stop when somebody challenges you, go, well, I'm just different than you. I am. No. You should always be examining to try to figure out. And don't get me wrong, you can have a sense of who you are right now, but know that if you have everything the way you want it and you don't want nothing to change, I get it. That's your equilibrium. Ride it out. But do not 5 minutes later express dissatisfaction with your life. That's gonna be the weirdest shit ever. So you're dissatisfied with you're totally happy with who you are, but now you're dissatisfied with your life. But you don't believe you should change. I don't know what to tell you.
And some people try to control their feedback loops. Like, well, I only want to read books by a black person. I only want to be taught by a black woman. I only want to be done by this person or this specific person. They're saying, put all the feedback loops in a nice, comfortable little box for me that feels good for me. You ain't changing. You ain't moving. You ain't gonna grow. Like, why the fuck are you doing it in the first place? Feedback loops are supposed to shake you in a certain way. It's supposed to shake up your comfort zone so that you can examine and pull more information so you can grow. We do this shit all the time.
If you had a job at McDonald's right now, every day, you have a manager working with you. There's a feedback loop there. You're probably blocking it because I shouldn't be at McDonald's. You have a job working at PG&E, very conservative corporate company, and you have a white guy who wears American flags on as a tie every day. Oh, he's a conservative. I don't want to hear his feedback. I can't tell you to always listen to it because it ain't the brain don't work like that. But you should reflect. You should listen. Everybody. Y'all know I'm pro-black. And y'all know I hate social justice. And I hate social justice because it creates mental blocks. Because people have different realities and they have different languages, different communication. And in those cultures, there's a range of behavior. To sit here and label everybody and walk away with simple stories, often we also create blocks. So let's say an Asian guy who don't speak to black people, he never been cool with black people. I go into his restaurant every time. He never acknowledges me. And one day he decides to give me some feedback. Oh, that Asian dude can't tell me shit. What's wrong with you? Like, when do you put yourself first? You put yourself last. Now, it's different. Somebody touch you. Somebody violate you. Somebody steal from you. Those are different conversations. We can talk about that differently. And sometimes you're going to be a victim of unfairness because you live in a society of a large group of people, and that's part of being part of a large group. That sometimes shit's going to be unfair for you. That's the conflict of existence, right? So if something's fair for everybody, then it's not fair for nobody. At some point, somebody has to receive an unfair experience for a healthy society. Mm-hmm. This is real big. This is big picture thinking, right? Right? We're going macro in this camp, right? We're not going to do this. Sometimes you're going to be a victim of some unfair shit. But if that victim becomes this traumatized pinpoint in your life, it's almost like you start to kill off pixels in your brain that won't let certain information come in because those areas I blocked them out. I listen to people I disagree with and I learn. It doesn't mean I agree with them. Doesn't mean I'm going to do what they. Sometimes I do end up agreeing with them. Like, fuck, I kind of agree with that. Because sometimes they see something I can't see. Mm-hmm. And I'm holding on to a feedback loop that makes me comfortable. So I'm really holding on to my certainty and realizing I have to embrace uncertainty. So when I say I hate social justice, because it's the movement of how the canceling, the disconnect, the good versus bad, the lack of tolerance, the narrow perception of life. It's like that's not what life is. Life is hella complex. And if you want to live amongst a group of diverse people, you have to be tolerant for. Look, man, I don't like there's a certain type of Asian food when they cook it, makes me want to throw up. But if my partner's Asian, I'm going to hang out at his house. I ain't about to say shit to him or his family, and I'm going to probably try to learn how to eat the shit. Because why? That's the diversity I want. But if I say I don't want, but if you say you want diversity, but everything has to be the way you want it, then that's not fucking diversity. Makes me want to throw the fuck up.
Hey, my daughter, I had some candy, and she came and tried to debowl my candy. So I'm like, all right, cool, I'll give you some. So I gave her a few pieces in a bag. And so she's like, Daddy, I got a question. Why? What? Why do I have this much candy and you have this much candy and we don't split the candy even? I said, because you're 5 and like 20 something pounds and I'm 220 pounds. So the weight difference is completely, so I'll try to explain to her in pounds and weight, right? So she's like, no, Daddy, if you have 5, I want 5. It's because her sense of fairness is based on where she is in life right now. And so if for somebody to throw a social justice blanket is just as elementary as that. It's like, we want this to be fair across the board. And we'll face the repercussions later, but we want fairness. And what's happening in like the trans community and Dave Chappelle and all of that is really showing how not long game we're playing because it's not fully thought out. Like you have people in MMA who are breaking skulls in MMA because they're like, hey, I identify as a woman and I want to fight MMA now. And they're letting them because they're like, well, we don't know what to do. This is like kind of weird for us. So we don't want to get in trouble. So go ahead. And their skulls being crushed. And so we have to understand feedback. And that's what we were saying earlier, where sometimes you sacrifice someone at the beginning. You sacrifice a person. You sacrifice an idea for the sake of the feedback loop. So they say, okay, shit, all right, well, let's not do that. Maybe we should rethink that because like that bone density thing is real. Because if just because he identifies and his hormone levels drop, if he's still on you, it's just gonna feel different. Feedback loops are important. And we got to understand our sense of fairness has to be retracted from that as well.
Go ahead.
This is from Fern. She has a question and kind of like something to offer to that. So her question was, how do we open our feedback loops up or take the blinders off? Is it elevated consciousness or being conscious? My thinking is we absorb as much as we can, be conscious of what it is we take in, and be open, and know we don't know shit.
Yeah, but so self-awareness is critical. Self-awareness is a journey. It's not a lot of this stuff is not. You don't flip a switch like light is not on, light is off. You flip the switch and light comes on 3 years from now, right? Awareness is number 1. 2, a lot of reflection. Like ask yourself everything you believe in, your strongest beliefs. Why not believe in that? Where could my belief be wrong? Challenge your own beliefs. Look at it. What is influencing you? What are your beliefs connected to? Does your belief exist solely based upon your self-journey, or is it tied to your relationship to others? Right? Look at what everything you communicate in your environment is saying to you. Like where you go on a weekend, right? Because like when you leave your house, you pass a lot of houses of different values and different feedback systems, and you choose that house. Why that house? What's in that feedback loop that's talking to you, right? When you hang out with your friends, why'd you choose that friend, right? When you watch your shows, why'd you choose those shows? Like you have to become so self-aware because feedback, you have to, it's like a matrix. If you don't take time to unlock it, it locks you down. And you're born a slave of that matrix. And so you have to constantly see, like, you know, remember when Neo got to a certain point and he went back into his old matrix, he would see glitches in the system. And he'd be like, okay, this is not right, right? The same thing has to happen for you as you start to become more and more aware of feedback loops. You start to see more and more everywhere. You start saying, holy shit. You even see if you're a parent with a kid, you'll say, oh shit, this is a horrible feedback loop. When I do A, what feedback loop am I giving my child B? Or what feedback am I giving? What tone am I using? If your child says, Mother, I just dropped something, what tone did you create? And what feedback loop are you communicating to that child, right? And long term, are you comfortable with that child taking on that same characteristic? And what does that characteristic look like when you blow it out? Like, for example, there was something that happened in society recently. Shit, what was it? I can't, okay, I'm gonna just kind of frame it, but I can't remember. It'll come back to me in a minute. But let's say you say, oh, it's unfair that this person got prosecuted for this because they're black. And then when a white person gets off for the same thing, you don't see that it's the same thing, but you don't realize you created a messaging that's okay. I'm not talking about the guy with the gun who shot the guys in Florida, but there's something else that happened in society where I'm like, yo, we okay that on this side, but we don't realize if that idea takes off, it becomes normal in society, you won't accept it, right? Well, the same thing happens with parenting. It's like if you're parenting a child, you may take on this idea of a certain expression and excuse it with, well, I had a hard day, or things are just rough out these streets, or I'm just trying to survive. But you don't realize the feedback loop you're giving your child, that's their new normality, right? Your child's friends, the school you put them in, right? You should pay attention to the class they're in. That's a feedback loop they sit in all day long. And then you wonder, well, why is my son acting like this? Did you ever pay attention to the environment he's in, right? All these feedback loops are so critical, and it will seem petty when you adjust them to people in your feedback loop circle. Like if you said, I don't watch that show no more. Like I don't listen to hip-hop hardly no more at all. Because hip-hop, the feedback loop of hip-hop was just too harsh for me. It's like I'm already battling all the time, so when I come off the battlefield, I want to practice love, right? And so I get home, and it's like, bitch better have my money. Oh, whoa, hold on, pimp. Hold on, man. I can't do this, man. I can't do this. Oh, I don't give a fuck. Get your money over everything. Oh, come on, man. I can't do this. Right? I want to hear. So I put on dramatics, and it talks about loving and hugging. I missed you last night, and I thought about you. I sung about you. I'm like, yeah, that's probably turn that up. Because that feedback loop is not I'm old school. It's either that, jazz, alternative soul, but I can't listen to music that's cussing at me all the time, right? There's a song by Doja Cat, Say So. Doja Cat. No, we didn't say that. And my daughter likes the song, but then she got to the rapping part. I'm like, whoa, titty ass, titty. I'm like, Doja, don't you realize kids will listen to this someday?
Shots fired!
Like, that feedback loop, I don't want that. And it's not that also too, I don't believe in a Puritan kid. I don't want my child having a Puritan environment because a pure person in a contaminated world gets gobbled up, right? Mm-hmm. So in the end, I want her to have a curated experience, but I also am aware, like, I need you to fall sometimes. I need you to run across a person who's gonna get on your nerves. I need you to meet that bully and overcome that bully, right? I need you to have all these different experiences. But I also don't need her to be basking in ignorance. So I don't need my house playing these new rappers that I never would know their name, the ones that are killing each other all on the streets. Just like some houses, like you get in some cars, and that's all they want to run. It's just the worst language I've ever heard in my life. Well, if that's all they playing, why am I surprised that the feedback loop this child's been listening to their whole life is saying, fuck off? Or if all I'm watching is violent-ass movies on television, or all I'm doing is playing violent-ass games in front of my kid, whatever the fuck you doing, right? Or all I'm doing is sitting around my partners, smoking and drinking and talking about violent shit. Well, wow. Are we not surprised? Your kids are the same way? That's their feedback loop. Go ahead.
Just Snoop did an interview recently, and now that he's got a new position at Def Jam, he's talking about Def Jam kids because, no one wants to openly say it, but he's like, they telling our kids to do a whole lot of shit, and we ain't telling our kids how to, I don't want them telling my kids to do nothing. And so he said a lot of things, but I think maybe Charlamagne asked him, do you think that, now that you're a grandfather, do you think that C. Dolores Tucker was correct in what she said to y'all? He said, yeah, she was right, man. We was on some other shit. We didn't want to hear that. Mm-hmm. He said, yeah, she was right. Yeah. And looking at it, yeah, she was right. And because I remember though that moment when they was going at her and she was going at them. But he's one of the few people who are not in jail or not dead from that group and still somewhere. And now he has to be concerned with impact. And I thought it was really interesting for him to be like, yeah.
Let me go to more. Let me show you another feedback loop. This is good. I can go. This feedback loop can go. It gets really deep, but we're not going. It's going to be too much, and y'all won't remember half of it. Let's say you want to deter smoking cigarettes or drinking sodas. If you've created a public feedback loop that is bad, and then people start doing it at home, you may actually increase children exposure to cigarette smoking and drinking because they're doing it at home more, right? Sometimes by bringing something publicly that you morally think is unacceptable, public, it allows the feedback loop becomes the thing that manages a healthy margin. But by making it private, by shaming it, it can allow it to go and mutate into some wild shit. And so morality is a hard conversation because morality is not about perfect or imperfect. It's about margin management. If the margin gets imbalanced, it gets out of control. And if it gets balanced, for example, if you go back to Old Oakland has 6 police officers total on the streets, right? Because at that time in the era of human history, it wasn't that it was moral. The margin was good, right? The drug dealers had control. There was order. There was structure. There was top-down rules. There was a feedback loop in criminal behavior, right? It was more organized on the streets. As the infrastructure broke because of outside intervention, it became wild, and then while being shamed, it went deeper underground, and it became so wild now that now you need more police officers because it has all these wild outlets that are just all over the place, right? So in theory, immorality, because it's part of human nature, is not meant to be completely smashed out. It's meant to be controlled within the margins. And see, once again, feedback loops is hella deep. And once you understand feedback loops, you start realizing because a lot of times we think about managing a system or group of people, we think it's going to be about me being like Martin Luther King, giving inspirational speeches and everybody's following me. No, if you're managing large groups of people, you should be paying attention to all the internal feedback loops.
Mm-hmm. Hey, this is kind of out there, but Christianity was built on a feedback loop of the people. After when people start writing all the Gospels, because they had an experience with Jesus Christ and they wrote about it, the masses went crazy over it, right? They loved it, and it start becoming an underground thing. Now, at the time, the current government was like, "Nah, we can't have that. Punish anybody you see with any gospel is going down. Burn them, whatever we got to do, but we can't have this," which moved the movement further underground to a point to where it got so out of control. The Constantine had to say, all right, we're going to do this Christian thing. Bring all your gospels, and we're going to pick the ones you guys can use and call it Christianity. Because the feedback loop was too overwhelming, they couldn't squash it. Because when it comes to religion, morality, all those things, they have such strong emotional ties to people's purposes that you can't just flip a switch on people. So when the overwhelming majority says, "No, we doing this, and we willing to die for it, so go ahead, do what you got to do," that's when you have a choice of of allowing chaos to ensue, or trying to control it.
Or when you create an underground movement, it can become a more powerful government than an actual public government. Yeah. Feedback loops are so that's. Man, walls don't work. Racism was designed to fall. There's no such thing. Now, what keeps racism? Racism as, okay, prejudiceness is not my concern. Systemic racism is a complex advanced. Wow, just said the word. It's a complex advanced system. Or whatever. I always mess up this phrase up. Anyway, that system is more dangerous because it was started historically, but it's taken on a life of its own. And advanced complex adaptive systems, complex adaptive systems. I get all kind of words start mixing in between. Complex adaptive systems, after a certain amount of time, become smart and live on their own. They don't need key players. So, but somehow we shifted our attention away from complex adaptive systems, and okay. So, if you want to understand a complex adaptive system is like looking at traffic on a freeway, right? So, if you understand how to manage traffic on a freeway, you have to watch the nature of the freeway. Even though individual agents are driving the car, you cannot understand the nature or the personality of traffic if you just study the individual in the car. It's not possible. So for us to run around identifying a racist, which we should call prejudice because they probably have no power, is almost distraction from what we need to be focused on, which is complex adaptive systems. We're systems that got started a long time ago, has unconscious players, but is systemically designed to have horrible impact on our communities. Then we work on shifting that without focusing on players. If you focus on players, you're missing you're wasting resources, time, and energy. Nobody's gonna live here. Nobody's gonna be alive for 500 years, right? The police players will only destroy you and shorten your life. But if you work on complex adaptive systems through the idea of understanding feedback loops and how they work and how you have to constantly learn because they're constantly getting smarter. So like the complex adaptive systems that was in the 60s are not here in 2020. This is really advanced shit I'm telling y'all right now. So if you sit around and use Martin Luther King ideas on how to deal with complex adaptive systems, that system's already grown smarter because of human engagement, just natural human engagement. And the people who've made the system smarter are a combination of unconscious players who are of both sides, victims and non-victims of the system. They evolve advanced the system, right? And so when you get into trying to identify individual players, it's almost a cruel role to get into. And it becomes a deterioration because quite often the person you dislike the most, you're really more like them than you realize. You're really them. The only reason you dislike them because they're so much like you. This is so cold. So what we end up doing is we end up just switching roles and we can just keep doing this. And we never solve the problem, right? What has to happen for us to solve the problems, we have to step out of this role of identifying each other and labeling each other and rise above it and move into another system. You guys get where I'm going with this? I know this shit's really deep, but I'm over all these goddamn conversations that come out of social justice, which is they're bad, they need to change, they need to apologize. That means nothing. If you don't build a better system, we ain't said shit. It's that simple. Or if you don't recognize the complex adaptive systems in your community that's causing damage, you're missing the whole fucking conversation. Like police officers are not bad police officers because there's bad people or the guy kneeled on his neck and he should go to jail forever. That's a distraction. He's in a complex adaptive system that causes damaging human behavior that he was just a victim of. I know that sounds fucked up, but that's the reality of the world we live in. World we live in. And if you think you can't be him, get in that system long enough. You will. That's a reality. And why I'm teaching entrepreneurs this is because when you build a big business, you got to look at you got to learn to think macro over micro. A lot of times when you just live in your own personal life, you're very micro. You know, I don't like this. She said this to me. That's my favorite outfit. I only drive this kind of car. Micro. But when you decide you want to run a business and you try to deal with the public, the community, you try to deal with 1,000 people, 1,000,000 people, 100,000 people, you have to, business partners, employees, vendors, you got to move towards macro because if you start looking at everybody through these micro filters, you're having more conflicts and more friction points. So you have all this friction that destroys your business because you don't have time to run your business. You're too busy trying to manage all this friction. You will go home in society and you have friction points in your family. You have friction. You go to a store, you go shopping. Like I go to a store sometime and people make mistakes all the time, right? It's just part of human behavior. Humans make mistakes. No such thing as perfect humans. So somebody may even do something like where I might be in line and a white guy in line, they look at him first. How can I help you? Right? I snicker. hey, I was standing here first. And I don't even get mad. And I move on. Because in complex adaptive systems, what it tells me is that in the world I live in, The world is not perfect. It's very imperfect. And if I look at this from a micro space, I can turn this into any story I want to. But if I go macro, does this matter? Does this even matter? I'm going to be dead in about 40 years. What the fuck does this matter? I got things I want to do. I'm going to sit here and waste my beautiful energy I can spend with my daughter, with my family, with this person because they asked him first? Are you fucking serious? This person gets paid $10 an hour, $12 an hour, $20 an hour, $30. I don't give a fuck what they get paid. I'm going to get an attitude? Like, if you're not coming from my daughter and my family, I could go through this because I know what I'm here to do. I'm here to build and create. I'm not here to get snagged on a lot of minor issues, right? And once you realize that all the people around, I heard this guy say the other day, I'm so outraged that this pandemic has lasted this long. I'm like, you outraged though?
Right.
Outraged?
Oh no, here's one. This a black mom was she was appalled and dramatically shaken that Dave Chappelle showed up to her son's school to ask them questions. So listen, Mom, if you're appalled and dramatically shaken by a comedian coming up to your son's school and having open dialogue, how does that prepare him for the real world? Like, we are in that space right now.
That's weird.
And she got raked on Twitter because of it, which is, I think, is good. But if you spend your mental energy on micro things like that, then you can't even make it to the macro. I love the word snag. That's a dope ass word because that's what happens. Like, if you ever, because literally, if you think about like you walking past something and your clothes get snagged. It just takes the tiniest piece of clothing as you're walking, and it can fuck up your whole clothing because it can rip a hole in it. And now you're like, oh shit, I can't sew this back. Because getting snagged is micro, but it can be major for you. Because if you can't move without getting snagged, you can't get 4 feet ahead. Something pissing you off, irritating you, it's not right, this not right. And you typically tend to even forget your goal. Because you get caught up on a snag.
Yes, sir. I mean, as an entrepreneur, you got to improve. You got to increase your tolerance, increase your understanding, increase your love, increase your curiosity. If I keep going, you're gonna think that Jesus is my advisor. Do you see where I'm going with this? Mm-hmm. Like, you guys don't realize a lot of this anger that we're projecting is killing ourselves, and we're mad at imperfection that you're a part of because you're imperfect. And quite often, like I said, the person that usually makes you the angriest is because you're that's why many of us are so angry at our mother or our fathers, because we're so much like them. That's the real talk and real truth. I had discovered that in my 20s. Me and my mother didn't talk for 3 years. I was mad as hell, and I realized, oh shit, I'm her. Is Zinga gonna be hella mad? My daughter gonna be so mad at me because she's just becoming little me. Right? That's part of that's how life is. And so once you realize, oh, what is it in them that I see in myself? And because they like, for example, they just said this about when the guy stormed the Capitol. Let's just say they got in. Let's say they killed off everybody. What are you gonna do? Who's qualified to go run the nation? Who's gonna give a phone call to? Who's gonna just the Pentagon's gonna be like, yo, now y'all here, yo, master, we serve you now. Like, people don't think shit out.
No,
people don't think shit out, and a lot of us are fighting with people who have never thought this shit out. Like, just chill, back the fuck up. Like, when somebody make a comment on television or whatever, let the shit go. It ain't that fucking serious. Stop trying to create a perfect world in your imperfect ass life. You're the most imperfect judge of a perfect world.
Hey, I was just thinking, you want to be a superhero in the next 5 years? Learn how to have complete emotional agility and not trip on little shit. Because as the world is evolving to this, you're evolving to that. And they're going to look at you like, man, how do you do it? How do you not get razzled when things don't go your way? Basic shit. Because the world is evolving in that way. Like, I remember when I worked in the corporate world, all my reviews at the end of the year would say, "Court's very calm under pressure." And it would be like, how do you do it? Do you know this is a job? I don't give a fuck about what happens here. I really don't. Like, I work here. I go home to real life. So if I fuck up, I have a whole life somewhere else. That's why I'm not tripping. What you guys call high pressure, that's nothing from where I come from. So this is easy for me. The world we're evolving to is becoming so snagged on every little emotional disagreement, anything outside of someone's comfort zone, anything outside of a comfortable feedback loop is a cause to raise hell.
Get angry, get mad.
But if you are like, oh yeah, don't trip, oh it's good, that allows you can move through life so fast and so freely and get far distances in terms of where you want to go.
Let me share another one with you. This is another fun one. Iterations. You know, in the art world, Shakina Irk can tell you about this. A lot of times in the artwork, Josh could tell you that in the art world. By the way, for those of y'all, I hung out with Josh's dad. Josh's dad is Josh Senior to the personality, so Josh gets his whole personality from his dad. His dad is like this brilliant intellect who loves to tell jokes. So it was like hanging out with Don Knotts and Albert Einstein all tied into one person. So he has all these old school Jewish jokes, but he's not Jewish. His wife is Jewish. It's hilarious. But anyway, iterations. So one thing we learned in art is that if you see a great photo on a wall, it didn't just pop up one day. We didn't just all of a sudden, great photo. When you see a great painting by a great artist, they didn't just get inspiration, go, work done, right? Well, not even you. I've seen it, truth. Everything happens in iterations. There's so many iterations from the idea to perfection. When you see Kaiser build it, some of y'all don't see the iterations. Y'all just see Kaiser build it, right? When you see United States government, you don't see a group of guys in a room. You see just the big building or the Pentagon, right? When you see Apple, you don't see all the iterations of what came before. You just see Apple. And so many of you guys go into comparison mode and go they against us. They have, we don't. And you are shitting on your current iteration. You have to go through steps. And so, because when you go through your iterations, they're feedback loops. They're feedback loops. So you try something, go, oh, it didn't work so well, let me do it again. I think, okay, let me do it better. And then you may try it and go, hey, Court, what do you think about this? And you keep like, you're like, fuck, that's all you need to say. And you go back and do it again, right? And then you may even then you put it on the table with Court, and Court look at it, and you don't say nothing. You don't say nothing bad, but you don't say nothing at all. You're like, shit's still weak, right? Because that's a feedback loop, right? Or you may go to sell it, nobody buys it. That's a feedback loop.
Mm-hmm. Or that's dope, but nobody buys it.
Nobody's buying it online, be like, oh, that's the hottest shit, but nobody wants it. That's a feedback loop, right? We don't realize that greatness comes through this process of iterations, and what we don't do is we don't understand, we don't see it around us, and we don't see it in ourselves. So a lot of times, we betray our stages of growth. This is why we don't value practice. Because practice is nothing but a pure feedback loop. Right? When somebody's shooting 1,000 times, they get a feedback loop. Does this work? Does this work? Okay, let me just so I can figure out what works until I can get that muscle, the perfect memory to have the perfect feedback loop to what works. But we want to go from instant gratification, this is an American society problem as a whole. Mm-hmm. That's why even politicians talk in instant gratification language. It's a flaw of the American public, which is everybody wants quick, immediate satisfaction. We're almost like TV children. Everybody wants everything to be solved within 30 minutes to an hour. Yep. Right? And so in the end, we're missing a powerful feedback loop that we could. So for example, you might meet somebody who, like, say, okay, I'll give you an example of something that's happened to me before. Somebody comes up to me and goes, Nana, you can say that because you got money. As if I just woke up one day and was like, got it. Right? They don't realize that, yes, because I went through my process and my steps and my levels, right? And it's 20 years in the game. You're on your 8th step, on your way to your 9th, but you won't go to 9th because you're looking at where I'm at and you're going, if I can't be there, then I must not be doing the right thing. Or if I'm trying to help you, now this is for those of you who are trying to be leaders, can you recognize that they're on their 9th level and you're on your 400th, you're on step 400? So when you're talking to somebody on your 9th level, how would you want to hear it when you're at level 9? Can you see that difference, right? Can you see also, can you see that when you hang out with level 9, you can't be like level 9? Because level 9 does what level 9 does. So you can pat them on the back and let them feel comfortable, but let them walk in level 9 shit. But know that your obligation is to go to 401 because you're at 400. You guys get where I'm going with this? Iterations is so powerful. And so now when you look around you, you realize, no, because I know with black people, we turn white people into gods. They said this, so that means this. What the fuck does that mean? They just... You go back from Europe to America, it's iterations that got them to this point where they are now in American society. The Anglo-Saxon Protestant is here in society, right? You may have Italians that may be here, Irish might be here, Jews might be, I don't know, somewhere. You help me out later on. Japanese and Chinese here, blacks here. What I'm saying is that a lot of times, if we don't understand iterations, we think that something magically is happening that's preventing us from climbing when it's really, we're just at a certain stage of our growth. And if you don't know you're at a certain stage of your growth, you got to realize that I can't mimic the guy that's at 400, I'm at level 9. So the guy at 400 says, hey man, you know what? When I wake up in the morning, I pay for these guys to come and clean the whole street. You're at level 9, you pay for everybody to clean the whole street, you broke. And you have to go out there and clean the street yourself. Different. Maybe level 400 talks about how he has to get his elevator fixed to go to the 100th floor. You might just have to work on getting that community center to pass all your permits, right? But doesn't mean that 3 generations from now, if you're playing, I ain't gonna get into this is gonna be too deep, but if you're playing infinite games over finite games, you'll understand that you're 3 generations from being in that game.
That's why it's so important for this not to be a prescription class. Because there's people in this class at different steps. Even me and Nana. Nana's at year 15, 16. I'm year 7. So I can't even take complete prescriptions from him. I have to absorb it and be like, okay, cool, well, where am I at in my stage? Because year 7, if you think back to where you were in year 7, you move different. So if you're taking things from a prescription perspective, you may have some. Plus, rules change at different levels, completely.
Oh boy.
Level 1, I may say, man, why ain't you hustling? You ain't hustling hard enough. And you hustling, and then you show up and you're like, why are you hustling so much? What the fuck you doing? And you're like, but you just told me why am I not? I know, but that shit is irrelevant here. Stop doing that. Like, so, and then level 7, there's pieces that completely change. So that's why it's important that this can't be a prescription class. It's a thinking class. How do we think at levels outside of our comfort zone to help us absorb the next level? How do I think at levels outside of my comfort zone to help me absorb? So it's about rhythms and patterns. If I can think in a pattern outside my comfort zone, then I'll absorb that comfort zone. That's the rule of the game. If not, if you're thinking I can just, anything other than that is just playing the lottery. You're playing the lottery, hoping you blow up. Let me just mimic what you're doing. My industry is so fucking funny. Like, everybody got a clothing line now, right? So everybody's just following these same simple formulas and patterns, not realizing there's much more to this shit. So I can go scroll on somebody's website and bite all their designs and then throw them on mine. But what does that do for me? If I didn't do all the groundwork underneath that in terms of understanding who my demographic is and if that even relates to them and communicating them in a way that converts, then none of this shit matters. So like get rid of the mindset of like, hey, tell me what to do. Hey, I got this thing. What would you do in this situation? Well, shit. I don't know. Who's your parents? You know what I'm saying? Let's start with, I don't know. I don't know. Here's my
That's a good question. Who's your parents?
like. Let's start there so I can understand everything. You know what I'm saying? But let's talk.
I tell my big class when they, who's your parents? I'm sorry, that's funny to me.
You feel me? Like, let's talk through a strategy at your level. It also is important for us because sometimes I know I can get into my natural rhythm of where I am and give advice from where I am instead of where you are, which it could be wrong advice. So it's important also for us to be mindful of where you are in terms of how to translate. Like somebody may be going through some shit, and it's like, damn, I'm going through some shit. I'm at a loss right now. I'm going through it, and the best advice may be good. Keep going through that shit. That shit gonna hurt. Yeah, it's gonna hurt here. It's gonna hurt here. It's gonna hurt here. But just keep going. Like, what? How come you ain't? No, that's where you're supposed to be. Cause I've been there, and that's 9 out of 10 entrepreneurs I know had to go through that same gauntlet that you're going through right now. So yeah, I see you on the other side of that. You know?
That was a really good one. Talk to your parents. That's great. Let's jump into a little bit of E-Myth, and then we're going to end that on close to on time. But I want to got about 30 minutes to jump into E-Myth. Is there any real powerful questions online?
No.
Okay. All right. Let's jump into E-Myth. You're on slide number 6. Can you see it?
Yep.
Okay. You go. You way back there. It's on the,
I know.
Yeah, it's on the screen.
Is it weird with me back here? Should I move up? Is it weird?
No, it's good. I can, as long as I hear your voice. It's different. I can't hear your voice. Then it'd be kind of weird. If I hear Chris' voice come out of your while you talking, that's gonna be weird for me.
Inquiry. I knew he was going to do it. So, inquiry, the active solicitation of specific information and controlled experimentation replaced the guessing, blind hope, and feverish busy work that preceded them. Innovation, quantification, and orchestration became the driving forces behind their efforts.
This might be part of the last. I think this is the continuation of the last piece. Let me just say this one thing because I'm gonna go to let's go to the next one because the next one's a new thought. I think this is the extension of the last thought for the last class. But let me say one thing I want to add to this. Experimentation is not for when you experiment with clients. So part of a feedback loop is you got to test, right? And as you test, you get feedback, and you go, "Oh, okay." Or you test certain ideas, right? There's no such thing as a perfect idea that's created in a boardroom in isolation, right? Every once in a while you may get lucky, but don't take that luck as that's insight or that's brilliance or you can read the future. No one can read the future. There's too much randomness. But a lot of times when you have ideas of changes you want to make with your business, you will build these models to go out and test. It's not about the model when you experiment something. Experiments are not meant to be successful. This is again, when you experiment or you test, it's not meant to be successful. They're meant to receive information for future successes. So when you try something and it fails, that's you won. If you try something that was successful, you may have won, right? But what you want to do is gather the information to build something for the future. Stop acting as if. Don't look at don't mix experimentation with scarcity. Realize that it's a process in itself that just needs to exist for a consistent learning experience, which enriches your feedback loop.
A lot of products that we use were experiments that were directed for something else. So it's just the truth in science and all those things. When somebody's trying to invent something, let me try this. A lot of the medicines that we use that are breakthrough medicines, most of them were directed at in a different way. They were just going through a series of experiments. And they're like, wait a minute. When we tried this on, we were trying to cure cancer, but when we tried this on rats, their hair grew Oh, let me call somebody because they may be interested in that. And then that's what people are using now for hair growth serum. Like that's how technology works. Most of it is accidents. So if you we gotta move entrepreneurial in the same energy. Be open to experiments and not be tripping off the rights or wrongs or where we're going.
Oh, by the way, just a side note, when he talked about some of his clothing, I don't know if you guys got a chance to see, for those of you who were born in the 80s and back, I know y'all remember Malibu Racing, the Malibu Grand Prix, down by, he has a shirt. I got one. Y'all need to get y'all's. It's so damn clean. I don't know if you got any more. You got any more? If y'all go on his website, he has his Malibu Grand Prix shirt. It brings, like when I just look at I haven't wore it yet because I'm waiting for a special occasion to wear it. And I told my wife accidentally, I don't know what I was thinking. I was just talking fast. I was like, yeah, I got this Malibu shirt from court. And she's like, yo, where's mine? Fuck, man, what I talk? Do you make a feminine version? Is that feminine?
No, I don't.
Or just okay, so
She's got to get a small.
yeah, huh? Oh, it was a Black Friday. Oh,
She's got to get a slimmer version.
man, man, how you gonna just go and have a Black Friday sale and don't announce it the day before?
It just happens.
Yeah,
man.
okay. Yeah. Well, anyway, if y'all get a chance, go to Court Smith basketball website and y'all see the Malibu shirts. They fire anybody that grew up in the Bay Area and went racing by the Coliseum know what that is. That was a whole life, a culture, a time in Oakland history. It was actually Malibu first started popping off, I think, before crack, and then crack kicked in,
Yep.
and it kind of wind down during crack era. So it's a time in Oakland history when the black culture of Oakland was rich and it was fun, and the safety level was much higher, the margins was different. So if you got a chance, check it out, and it's a well-designed shirt,
Thank you, bro.
and it's thick too. Like it's a winter type. It's a perfect shirt to wear in the winter because it's thick. It's not that thin, like that polyester you work out in, and you just know. You know, if you spit on it too hard, it's stained forever. It's that quality material. So it's a quality thick material. I don't know where you or how you found that. I don't know.
Thank you, bro.
That's that underground mafia material. But anyway, y'all gotta check it out. It's tight as hell. Next slide. I just had to just mention that.
Appreciate that, bro.
Yeah.
An age in which your customer is deluged by, that fancy word, is deluged by so many products and promises that he becomes swamped in confusion and indecision. The challenge of our age is to learn our customer's language and then to speak that language clearly and well so that your voice can be heard above the din. Because if your customer doesn't hear you, he'll pass you by.
Feedback loop. I think we just spent a whole hour, and the reason you can't speak your customer's language because you don't have a healthy feedback loop. Like a lot of times we think, once again, marketing is not material. It is a clear assessment of individuals, and then you're using the material to communicate and to listen and to respond to people, to acknowledge people, right? But when you start looking at marketing material as just beautiful pieces of art, it's distortion, right? It's like you almost gotta say, I designed this for people like you. And I see you, I hear you, and it has to be a continuation of that feedback loop, right? But if you don't understand feedback loop, you're creating marketing material that's just cute to you. See, cute to you is irrelevant because marketing is not what you say it is, it's what the customers say it is. So that's what a feedback loop is. So if I'm doing a feedback loop on customers, I want to get clarity on what they find attractive, what they like to hear, what they want to see, what they do, what they believe in, what language they use, and then that's where you can cut through all this noise because right now, with this new Facebook world, I don't know if you guys been on Facebook anytime. I went on Facebook. I go on Facebook now once every 3 weeks now. That's pretty bad, bro. I went there the other day, and they loading up with ads like you never seen before, right? Facebook trying to make sure they take care of all their investors, and so they're gonna pay them dividends. And so at the end of the day, it's like everybody's being flooded with all the new companies, all the new branding, all the new material. But if you notice one thing, they're all using a hipster style, modern look, but they're not figuring out how to talk to you, right? Even some of them do a kind of a generic job of, hey, I saw you look at this. This kind of looks like some stuff you be into. But in the benefit you have in a local market is you can turn on your feedback loop and hear things that the digital system and the algorithms cannot hear.
Hey, I'm gonna use the word snag again. It's just my word for the night. I think also a lot of us, we can't speak our customers' language because we snagged by hella shit, our own low self-value. So our desire we gotta prove ourselves that we somebody because we throughout our life people didn't believe in us. They talk bad on us. So we're countering that by making this about us. So we snagged by that. We snagged by haters. We snagged by all these things that we're snagged by prevents us from clearly just cutting through and seeing our customer and communicate a clear lane to the customer and saying, how can I serve you? How can I communicate with you? What can I do to make you connect with me so that it converts you? I think it sounds super easy on paper, but when you are creating a marketing strategy or you're creating a product, if you don't clear your vessel from all those snags, it's gonna come out in everything you do.
Yeah, matter of fact, you know what? And remember, your brain has selective memory, right? It does mental filtering, and it does all or nothing. So one of the students called me and said, you know, Nana, I went back and read David Burns' book again on depression. He said, you know, I had bad times with my mother, but it wasn't always bad. My brain just colored all of our experiences as being bad. My mother was always this. My mother was evil. My mother was abusive. He's like, she slapped me one time. Now, all that day we had an amazing time. After she slapped me, we had amazing times after that. But my brain colored our whole experience because your brain has all of nothing and it has a selective memory, right? And then it tweaks it and it amplifies it and adjusts it based upon how many times you talk about it. It revises it, right? So by the time you finish revising it, talking about it, and reflecting on it, it's your mother didn't hit you. She shot you with an AK-47, and she missed it, and you bled all night in the hospital. And you caught COVID back in '87, right? It's like, what the hell, right? But your brain will literally take a story and just flip it with modern details and integrate it with everything. By the time you, and it feels real to your memory, right? So a lot of stuff that we're holding on to ain't even real. We're taking moments and projected them into our everyday life and turned all people into evil. I remember when I first became pro-black, I was waiting for a white person to piss me off. This is when I was 22. I was just waiting for somebody to say something bad, right? I just read it, and every time that's why I can see social justice as clear as day, because it reminded me when I was 22. When I thought they did something offensive, I couldn't wait to unload with words, right? And guess what? One day I went home and I realized my blood pressure was up. I was stressed as hell. I was mean. I was mad. I'm walking around with a dingy-ass dashiki, angry at the world, hella books in a backpack for no goddamn reason, right? Put your hand down, ask no questions. So what happened was, and I realized, I'm killing myself. Number two, I didn't pay attention to all the white people that were treating me hella cool. Because I was just looking. In my brain, I was so convinced it was going to happen that even when somebody was doing right by me or even kind by me, I literally passed them by, and my memory is only looking for other things to add to that memory and to that thought and to that belief system. You guys get where I'm going with this? So a lot of you guys can't see the customer because you won't let go of these ideas that are outdated. Go ahead. Next one.
Unless you understand what needs to be done, unless you understand the essential importance of marketing to your prototype, unless you understand that your customer is far less rational in his convictions and expectations than you had ever imagined, unless you understand that your prototype is your product, all the how to do it in the world won't make a bit of difference to you.
We got power going out on my iPad. Read that one more time, because I have this. This is a strong one here. This is very strong. Read it one more time.
Unless you understand what needs to be done, unless you understand the essential importance of marketing to your prototype, unless you understand that your customer is far less rational in his convictions and expectations than you had ever imagined, unless you understand that your prototype is your product, all the how to do it in the world won't make a bit of difference to you.
Okay, there's something here. I'm gonna give you guys, a seam ripper. I just recently told my wife I want to learn how to sew, so she brought me a sewing machine, and so I got all the tools, and I sewed my first seam. That's all I got. I can't tell you nothing else. I ain't made nothing. Shakita came over the other day. And she challenged me. Said, "I bet you can't sew a straight line." I told her, "How hard can this be?" And my line looked like I had a DUI. So I was sharing this idea, but I'll give you guys a seam ripper here. It can help you have deeper insights. One of the worst practices I've experienced since we've been a branding firm and a branding/marketing, behavior science branding firm, which one of our tools and branches is marketing, is customers and government and large corporations that say, I asked the customer and this is what they said. One of the things that we've discovered, and we understand this is why we call ourselves a behavior science branding firm, not only do we have behavior science specialists who work here, but we call ourselves a behavior science firm is because we hear what comes out of people's mouth, but we're watching the emotion that's driving the conversation. Without me getting deep into the whole COVID discussion, he's so slow, poor baby. So without me getting deep into the COVID discussion, people are not talking about their distrust for the vaccine. That's not what they're discussing. So if somebody says, I don't trust the vaccine, I say Tuskegee. There's another human dissatisfaction that's actually happening, and those who keep chasing the whack-a-mole of what people are saying are wasting time and resources. Human beings are sharing their concerns around the vaccine, but they don't have the language or the internal insight to communicate. So what they're saying is that I have a need that's not being satisfied, and because that need is not satisfied, I'm going to join this information cascade that derails me from wanting to take this vaccine, right? But if you meet that human need, or if you tune into what that human need is, then we will unravel that resistance slowly, not right away, but slowly unravel the resistance to taking the vaccine. Now, why I share that? Not because anybody's here trying to get my take vaccine. We're working with that. We work with City of San Francisco, helping them translate this in Mark Zuckerberg Hospital. What I'm suggesting to you guys is that when customers come in, you got to learn your customers behind what they say to you. Don't think because you asked them, run to their lab and start building, and that's it. Customers will tell you. I remember when they came up with the famous soap campaign, and they was running a campaign about clean clothes and make your clothes just as white as possible, right? And everybody thought, oh yeah, this is it. You know, people talk about they want clothes clean, they want it white. And what they found out is they noticed that when the people would put their clothes at the dryer, they would go, smell it. And they realized to human beings, the smell of the clothing meant more than the white clothing. But if you asked them point blank, they would talk about how there's their favorite brand because it's white or clean. Same thing with Coca-Cola. Human beings don't know how to translate that. They're not rational. They're making impulsive decisions. Remember last week when I talked about affective heuristics, which is human beings make decisions based upon feelings, not rationalization. So they say, I like this car because it feels good. That feels right to me. I like it. Just feels something about this car makes me feel good. They didn't analyze the engine. They didn't analyze the history of the company. They didn't look at the engineer records, right? Human beings don't make decisions on analytical, but a lot of times we're designing product as if the customer is this rational, analytical person that shares. We forget our customer is a walking, feeling autopilot machine. The more you understand that, including yourself, the more you can align with, when you can hear customers speak to you, you can hear the dog whistles in their language, in their words, and then you learn how to speak back to that dog whistle, right? Where we mess up is we think that we need to speak to their rational brain, and they don't even believe in the shit they talk about anyway. So you're wasting your time. I mean, fashion is not rational. Look, I don't buy anything from top brand stores anymore, especially when I learned the tricks. The tricks is subscribe to your favorite designer, whatever clothing company you like, and when that shit go on sale, wait for that 30% off plus end of the year, and that should be 80% off, right? Ain't nobody go, like I had on these pajamas this morning, and my nanny came up to me, she said, hey, look at some dope ass pajamas. I said, shh, Marshalls, $7 all day. I said, if somebody walked up to me tomorrow and said, Nana, are those last year's pajamas? Oh. But like nobody does that, right? But when the customer buys them, they're thinking that. When you buy a fancy car, you think everybody's on their block, on their porch, waiting for you to drive down the street, talking about, oh, there she go. Oh, shit, I told you she's going to be somebody because she's in that BMW right now. They don't even know what fucking car you drive half the time. Because people in their own world. When you come to dress at your job, if you don't believe me, tomorrow go to your job and say, hey, y'all, what did I have on yesterday? People are like, shit, I don't know. I better remember what I had on yesterday. But yet when you shopping, you're like, yeah, I'm going to kill him. I'm going to kill him. Tomorrow I'm going to put these shoes on. I'm going to put this dress on. I'm going to have my hair done like, they going to be, woo, going to kill it. So that's what you're dealing with. Not the rational econ, management of scarcity, resources, take care of my kids, right? A lot of times you might say, well, I don't want to charge this price because, God, that's going to be a little expensive. It seems so expensive. Okay, don't charge. Save them that money. And then watch them walk right outside your shop and go throw that money away on something. You'd be like, you just really bought what? Are you serious? Like, you guys don't realize, like, human beings, once you understand, like, once you take labels off of human beings, once you stop having this idea of walking perfection, once you start seeing the context of humans, look at us 100 years ago, 200 years ago, 1,000 years ago, look at us in Asia, China, Africa, Europe, look at us in all different worlds and see these common similarities. You realize, oh, that's who I'm selling products to. That's who I'm selling products to. I'm not selling products to Einstein. And even Einstein wasn't Einstein when he brought this. I promise you, a lot of people that you think when they make purchases, that's just not how the human brain works. A car is not a rational purchase.
Most of the time is because it feels good in the moment. It feels good in the moment. And the reasons behind purchasing and buying decisions scatter across anyone's reasoning based on their stories. You guys remember when we did, well, maybe this is last year or whatever, where we did the priming and we primed you with the number 7, and people were like shouting out, trying to explain why they chose 7. No, I chose, Mama was like, that was my husband's number. And then I'm like, I don't care. You create all these reasons as why, hindsight, but you still got primed because it was emotional for you in the moment. That's the same thing people do when they buy. If something resonates with the memory, it resonates with the feeling, you say something that trigger an emotion, it doesn't matter how logical it is, you can get them. And so once we understand that, we're talking about content versus context. We're playing in a context world, period. Playing in a context world. So we got to get better at learning how to play in that world pretty much, damn near exclusively. Because there's certain people who play in context that we call, man, they got a mouthpiece. Man, they got a mouthpiece. I wish I had a mouthpiece like that. The reason why they got a mouthpiece is because they speak and operate on a completely different plane than you. We operate on a logical content world, and they operate on an emotional context world. And they can walk up to somebody and say, man, come here. To a girl who you've been trying to get at for all day, you've been doing all the weird shit and the flowers and the this and that, and they just grab their arm, come on. And they're like, okay. How the fuck did you? Because it's timing, it's emotional triggers, and it's context.
That's one of the reasons I study Hugh Hefner all the time. Hugh Hefner makes no sense to me. Makes no sense to me. When I was growing up, I grew up around a lot of powerful women when we were fighting for their rights back in the 80s and 90s. And yet, even those same women would celebrate Hugh Hefner. But would say pimping is the worst thing in the world. And I said to myself, holy Jesus, this is crazy. Right? It's crazy. Hugh Hefner was a master marketer. Master. Because it made no sense. But if you understand humans, it made all the sense in the world. When I was younger, I couldn't understand Hugh Hefner to save my life. Because I'm like, wait a minute, but it's an honor for you to be in Playboy naked? But I can't get you to take your clothes off right now? No, that doesn't work like that, huh? When I was 18, I had propositions.
This
But anyway,
class talk too much. Stop talking so much.
Huh?
Listen, talk too much. Stop talking so much.
Somebody got to game you up on that one.
Yeah. Hey,
Somebody
yeah.
gotta
I
game
learned
you
that
up
one
on
later. Yeah, that was
Shut the
Hirsch.
fuck up.
yeah. I was over there. Come on. A little bit. Come on, a little bit. Shut up.
Just hush. Just boop, boop. Would you put your finger in the mouth? Boop, 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 boop. Don't say nothing. Okay.
All right, go ahead.
The first question you must ask then is, who are they? Who are my customers specifically? What is their demographic profile?
I can't tell you how much, and I would almost say psychographics is more than demographics today. Because especially with this new young generation coming up, I don't know what the demographics are anymore. It's like, okay, when I was coming up, demographics was very clear. Like, we can all be in the school, but we still within our demographics. These new kids, a straight kid can hang out hard with the gay kids can hang with the straight kids, with the white kid, with the black kid, with the Asian kid, the Indian kid, with the conservative kid, with the liberal kid. You're like, y'all kicking it together? Yeah. Right? So, depending on who your market is, I can't begin to tell you how many people start a business before they know their market. That's the weirdest shit in the world. Who you selling to? And I can almost tell you who you're selling to when you first start, yourself. You have never taken time to realize, like, many of us are unconscious, self-centered, self-focused, and narcissists. And we start a business to sell it to you and anybody as a copy-paste of yourself, only to find out that you're unique. Now, once you realize you're unique, you realize you just created a product that's only designed for one. So if you're going to get to business, don't start off with the idea of one. Start off with find out who you want to sell. That means you got to pay attention to other people's habits. That means you should be a person that spend more time asking questions. Like when me and this man travel somewhere, or we go somewhere, or me, him, and Mashama, you'll watch how we talk to people. We're just picking people's brain. Hey, why you do it this way? Hey, why is this over here? Hey, what do you think about this? Hey, what do you think about this political thing that just happened over here? Hey, what do you think about why are we doing that? Because that's going to empower us to understand who we want to talk to. Because if I had a job, maybe I wouldn't care. Maybe I would just walk around and just, I don't know, play tennis in my conversations. Sometimes I'll launch a conversation, sometimes I'll receive a conversation, right? But once you decide you want to move a product into a market, I know who's the fucking market? That's the part that kills me. Nobody can tell me. I promise that's one of the most common unanswered questions I dealt with in 16 years. Well, who are we talking about? Even government says this. Hey, we need to help the black community, and we need to help everybody else too. What?
No.
There's no such thing as the phrase. Okay, once again, I hate social justice. There's no phrase as people of color. There's no such thing. When you're marketing products, there's no product that people of color purchases. Because people of color don't even know they're part of that group. I ain't never been to a person say, hey, man, you from people of color continent? No! Right? It's like even in the Latin community, do you guys know how large the Latino community is? It's fucking huge. And they don't all like each other.
No, they don't.
Don't get that shit to it. Even Mexicans in California are different from Chicano is different from Bay Area Chicano is totally different than LA Chicano.
Yeah. Norteños and Sureños fight each other.
And if you don't know that, and you out there selling a product, you can walk into the wrong conversation really fast. Once again, learn the language of your market. That means you got to learn to see the variations and then also the movement. So you never stop learning because people don't stop changing. Your 18-year-old market is changing every year with a new generation. Every 2 or 3 generations, you may have a huge flip in desires, behaviors, or movement, or interactions. And so if you're trying to be a business, I'm not going to do this, but if you're trying to play the infinite game, which is stay in business, not the finite game, which is reach a goal, then that means you have to be highly adaptable to adjust to the constant changes of your market. Never plant flags or this is the kind of company. If you BlackBerry today, I got you to become Apple just as fast as Apple became Apple. This is called the Black Apple. Oh, that's horrible. That's a horrible name. That's just somehow that sounds like it should be in the Hugh Hefner archives. But go ahead. Next one. Black Apple.
How do you do that?
The Black Apple? I don't know.
My mind is going places.
Yeah, it just sounded bad and there's nothing wrong with it, but it just sounds horrible. Go ahead.
How do you do that? You find out on your questionnaire what colors they prefer, what shapes, what words. You find out the brands of perfume they buy, automobiles, clothes, jewelry, food. You match those brands to the ads and commercials that sell them. And you discover by becoming interested in what messages are being sent to your customers by other companies who are successfully selling to them. What messages you might send to those customers who are demographically and psychographically the same as your existing central demographics model to intentionally come in your door.
Okay, so I'm gonna confess something to you guys. This is elementary. This is stage one, which is first learn your demographics. This is all stage one. Stage 1A is watch those who talk to their demographics and how they talk to them. Watch their habits, their language, and but also watch their frustrations. Pay attention to their friction points. See, Apple exploited friction points. When you learn to exploit friction points, they say the fastest way to become a billionaire is solve other people's problems. So stage one is you got to go to this first stage first. But the more advanced level of it, so you can become originator of your own communication, is you master watching people's friction points. So, like, for example, everybody who is in any kind of movement has a point that they tolerate something, but it's a friction point for them, right? If you had to catch Bart back and forth to work in San Francisco, that's a friction point for you, right? When you smash in that train and you shoulder to shoulder with a whole bunch of strange people, that's a friction point, right? If you find friction points in certain people and you learn to integrate that into your communication to say, I see you, but I also feel what you feel, and I'm here for you. You don't even have to be that direct, a direct solution. You can just be a relief, or you can be an acknowledgement, right? That's a huge marketing campaign. Because quite often, if you just acknowledge people and with their friction points, often they will slowly align with you. That's how you develop faster trust, by saying, I see some of the stuff you're going through, right? So, I mean, if you look at all the people that people fell in love with in history, it's because they feel like that person help them to be seen. Think about that. Anybody that somebody may say, oh, we love him, whether it's from Martin Luther King to Reagan, people say, I love these people because they help us be seen. Right? And so this is elementary, but stage 2 is learn to see the friction points. Next one.
What's your trading zone? It's the geographic perimeter within which your current customers mainly live. You take their addresses from your questionnaire, identify them on a map, draw a line around them, and that's your first pass trading zone.
I love that, first pass trading zone. So your trading zone is if your business that's going to rely upon and you can almost do that digitally too, because you can say, like, you have an algorithm map of people that you engage with. You don't need to analyze. This is like, okay, so when I went to Thanksgiving, my Shakira father was talking about all these far out governments, but yet can't change nothing here. Sometimes we get in business, we talk about what Steve Jobs, and somebody told me the other day, if Mark Zuckerberg asked me to come to dinner with him, I'm not sure how valuable that would be for me, because he's too far in front of me. And by the time that information is relevant, I got to learn it again anyway, right? The reality is that when you're out here learning people, learn the people you want to sell to. Pay attention to what they're doing. If I want to sell Harley parts, I'm going to have to pay attention to everybody that's in the Harley. And when I see people walking down the street, if I see a T-shirt on you, did you wear Harley? Hey, man, you have a Harley? Yeah. What kind of Harley you got? So what's your friction point? That's real generic. It would come out through a better, well-developed conversation. And as they say, or you know Harleys, right? Oh, okay. Thank you. But you got to pay attention. And sometimes you can just draw a line around the community. If you, like with Shakina, You have a group of people who would love to just walk down the street and go into the gym. Okay, then you should watch those people every chance you get. Talk to them, introduce yourself, meet those people, and eventually you'll start to see this commonality of things they like, and you can literally design your business overnight where it literally says, "I'm for you."
Yeah, Jordan from Hope, he works at Courtsmith now in the sales department, and I watch him go through his sales presentation. I listen to him pretty much all day, and he's doing a fucking great job, by the way. But I hear him when we put our sales presentation together. In theory, in your mind, you kind of don't understand how it's going to unravel till you start getting in there. And so I listened to him. He talking to the coach, and he's like, "So, oh, you already with somebody? Okay, well, what don't you like about them?" And they unravel it. Well, they're this or that, and they late all the time. It's just limited on the quality. And the strategy is, as they're unloading on you, you recreate your pitch based on those pain points. Oh, is that yeah, see, so we do X, Y, and Z. So even if they are already committed to something, that's in their mind. Like, they're the ones that can solve these pain points for me. And so that's really how you grasp and enter in somebody's world. They're not going to forget about that. Because, and as they continue to do business where they are, it's going to continue, like, now their cognitive dissonance is focused on that pain point now. They're going to remember it. Understanding your customer's pain points is some of the fastest ways to acquire new customers. I used to manage this artist, and what I liked about dude is he didn't really give a fuck about the praise. Every time a person would come up to him and say, "Hey, you're so dope. I just listened to your song. It was so amazing." He'd say, "What didn't you like about it? What didn't you like about it?" And they'd be like, "What? What's one thing that you didn't like about it?" And they like be flustered for a second, and they be like, he's like, no, I don't care about that shit. Give me something that I can work on. And they're like, well, it was mixed kind of low. It could have been mastered. The whole thing could have mastered, because when I listen to my other album and then that comes on, it's mixed and mastered kind of low. That's kind of the only thing. Got it. Now he just solved a mixing and mastering issue that's not fluid amongst other artists that now I didn't even know. I didn't think about no shit like that.
Yeah, well, it's funny. A lot of artists don't make it because they have a corruptive feedback loop. Everybody's around them praising them or fans. If your circle is kind of like fan base, even though they may be working for you, even though they may be professional, but they're still fans, right? Then they become poor feedback loops. You need or you got the most money in the room, and they're already intimidated by the amount of money you have, and you can fire them because they already seen you act a certain. You guys now can see how a lot of artists end up destroying their career because their feedback loop. Okay, next one.
This marketing thing isn't nearly as complicated as
By the way, we're almost done. This is going to be the last two slides. We're going to close class now.
Okay. This marketing thing isn't nearly as complicated as I might have made it seem, I continued, but it's important that you take it seriously, because it most often is regarded by small business owners as merely good common sense. And I have seen more often than not that the only definition of good common sense is my opinion. That most small business owners, suffering as they do from what I've come to call willful disinformation, simply decide what they want to do without any information at all, without any interest in what's true, and then simply do it.
That's so common. I mean, I can't. And when you challenge them, you would swear to God they sat in a arena at the Coliseum and received advice, because they could become so sensitive and so emotional. Because once again, they're protecting their beliefs, and that's what they look. If you guys remember the book, we had a book last year. What I learned losing $1 million, I think it was. And it was a non-charlatan book about investments, which I think is one of the most important books. If you ever get to the investment game, you have to learn the psychological challenges of decision-making and the emotions of investing. Because you got to say, when you're investing, you can lose 10,000 that fast. Okay, and that's a psychological thing for you that if you live in a space of scarcity, it doesn't work. But But what it was trying to highlight in that book is that when you're making decisions with your business, if you over personalize a lot of your decisions in a positive way, you will personalize everything. So you'll personalize feedback. So for example, if I say, man, today, dude, I made $500,000 in one day because I had this brilliant idea and I killed it. I'm telling you, I knew I knew what I was saying. Let me tell you about the day I lose that money. It's going to be a form of self-destruction. I'm personalized it, right? In order to make richer decisions, you got to remove the personalization. You can't start saying, I made it successful, because you will also say, I am a failure. And so once you get into the point that, hey, I made a decision, it worked, cool, there's possibilities it couldn't work, part of his portion of his luck, great probability I happen to be falling in the right window. And when it goes bad, cool, bad window, things didn't work, some things happen, how can I improve, right? Well, that's important when it comes to marketing, because a lot of times when you're in marketing, the reason you don't want to hear outside opinion, you personalize your decision. You convinced I made the best decision of what's going to make us successful, and I got us this far. So I'm 5 years in the game, so I don't got us this far. I must obviously understand business. So at this point, I'm going to make this next decision. And you don't realize that in order to improve a decision, you have to maximize as much information you can pull from the outside world to make the best decisions. But you're not going to do that if you isolate yourself in a private room making decisions. And God forbid you write well or you communicate well, and you pick big words around it to the point that you intimidate everybody around you not to challenge it because they can't even match the fucking words you just use to describe your ideas.
You stuck. You stuck in your own mess of information. You're stuck. That is the most damaging place you can be. That's also how sometimes you see celebrities who are brilliant, or entrepreneurs or artists who are brilliant, and they had this peak, and they don't make songs like they used to, or they can't innovate business wise like they used to, or they can't. And you're thinking, why? Like, did they OD on drugs or something? They got stuck off this. This is a huge one right here, because
Prince, they haven't Prince.
you happen to print. But you can be imprisoned by your own knowledge, and if like you said, if you're the smartest person in your room and you're charismatic and you're great with words, and you got money, now it's hard for anybody to challenge your ideas. That's why always seek the people who don't give a fuck about that shit, who will disagree with you. I don't know. I ain't with that. I don't know about that. You don't have to explain that one to me. Because that way you can either confirm or create new. You can upgrade softwares together mentally for yourself, or you can have a new aha moment to say, oh shit. Or you can reaffirm what you believe is even stronger.
And I look forward to friction. When I'm talking, like, if you're on the court, me and Court had this debate yesterday, it was friction. Not negative friction. That friction is also making me qualify and show up honesty to the conversation. The friction also makes me responsible if I come talk to him. The friction keeps our feedback loop clean and healthy, right? To remove the friction will make us eventually lazy in the advice and information we're sharing, right?
Exactly.
But if he says, I don't know what you're talking about, I don't disagree. Like, he said something to me, and I was like, I don't know what that means, bro, right? And in that way, that friction says, okay, step up. And then I have to step up. Then we may go back and forth, but when I got the phone, I'm like, that's hella dope, because we're polishing our feedback loop. You guys get where I'm going with that? So that's this resistance to friction shit that
It's bad,
is
bro.
that's
It's
just
bad,
it's
bro.
horrible.
I don't have a name.
Like it's horrible.
bad, bro.
Like at some point you can have discomfort without wanting to hit somebody in the mouth.
Yep.
Hey, come on, grow up, people. We can't be mad. Like, being mad is just what it is. It's a temporary emotion that lasts only seconds, and after a while it's gone. At some point, is it valuable or not valuable? And I promise you, friction with him, friction with Mashama, friction with Brian, friction with all the friends, friction with Chris, all these type of people around me, it enhances me. I don't look at it as bad. Now, I don't live my life to be always in a friction zone, but when I'm in that space of feedback, I like a little bit of friction sometimes, because it requires, when I'm trying to provide feedback, it provides me to make sure that I'm very clear and honest and responsible for information I'm sharing. Mm-hmm. Last slide. That's one.
My next one
No,
has
that was
questions.
it.
Oh, this marketing thing is nearly. Oh, so that was it, huh? Oh, just do the same one, huh? Well, any questions online? We good? As they say in Brooklyn and Russia, I'll see y'all next week. We out. That's it.